Chapter 181. After leaving the gate, the carriage raced towards the castle, coming to a screeching halt at the front. Ethan, Cyrilla, Luna, and Ginny followed the crowd towards the entrance. Ahead, a commotion indicated Harry and Malfoy were embroiled in an argument. Ginny, hesitating briefly and glancing between Ethan and Harry, darted towards the scene upon noticing Ron's involvement. She has always admired Harry Potter, but it seems she admires you as well. Luna's voice, melodious as ever, reached Ethan's ears. I was unaware of this, he admitted. Before Ethan could respond, Shirley's teasing voice interjected. Didn't you notice? Our beloved heartthrob has a unique way of attracting admirers. This isn't something within my control, Ethan replied with a wry smile, though a hint of pride flickered within him. Without any effort on his part, he had inadvertently drawn the attention that typically surrounded the original protagonist, showcasing his unintended charm. Meanwhile, Malfoy's taunting voice carried from the front, targeting Ron with his usual disdain. Ethan, however, remained unbothered, confident in Hermione's ability to manage the situation. True to his expectations, upon catching up, he found Malfoy effectively silenced by his own clothing, standing in a daze. The quarrel served as a minor prelude to the school year's commencement. The group proceeded to the auditorium, with Harry and Ron being summoned by Professor McGonagall. The auditorium, as always, was illuminated by thousands of candles floating above, casting a warm glow over the students. However, this year's atmosphere was markedly subdued. The presence of Dementors, both from recent incidents and their ominous hovering above the auditorium through the enchanted ceiling, cast a pall over the students, dampening the usual excitement. The sorting ceremony concluded in an unusually somber silence, with the freshmen too intimidated to speak. Principal Dumbledore, taking the stage, addressed the students with a somber expression. The Dementor's oppressive presence was undeniable. In an attempt to lift spirits, he summoned a magnificent phoenix, whose melodious song filled the auditorium, instilling a sense of warmth and courage in the hearts of the students. That's a phoenix. Hermione's voice, rich with knowledge, came from the Gryffindor table. Their song is believed to have magical properties, capable of bolstering the brave and dispelling fear in the hearts of the troubled. Welcome back to Hogwarts, Dumbledore's voice, now more comforting, resonated through the hall. He proceeded to address the elephant in the room, the presence of Dementors at Hogwarts, dispatched by the Ministry of Magic. This revelation sparked an uproar among the students, with many expressing their grievances loudly, some even calling for action against the ministry. The absurdity of being accosted by Dementors on what should have been a mundane journey to school was not lost on anyone, highlighting the extraordinary circumstances they found themselves in. It was a good day. Dumbledore, understanding the need for students to express their frustrations, did not intervene. He recognized that their complaints could also serve as leverage against the Ministry of Magic. Once everyone had settled down, he began, It is true that the Dementors overstepped during their search. However, what fills me with pride is that our young wizards were able to stand their ground and even repel them. There was no need for Dumbledore to name anyone specifically. Even those who hadn't heard the full story could guess who he was referring to. Ethan had accomplished far more significant feats than merely driving away Dementors. The students in the auditorium craned their necks to look at Ethan. The Ravenclaws, previously indifferent, now shared a sense of pride and sat up straight. But, Dumbledore introduced a caveat, this does not mean that all our young wizards should seek out such confrontations. He continued, Dementors are stationed at every entrance to the school grounds. During their stay, I must emphasize that no one is to leave the school without permission. Dementors are not fooled by tricks or disguises, not even an invisibility cloak. Ethan smiled, knowing this was a nod to Harry. The reason Dementors can see through disguises is simple. They perceive the world differently. They see the essence of a soul, making living beings stand out unmistakably, rendering invisibility cloaks ineffective. In this aspect, they are far more discerning than any security system. Dementors do not understand pleas or excuses, so I urge you all, do not give them any reason to harm you. I am relying on our prefects, as well as our new head boy and head girl, to ensure that no student provokes a Dementor. Dumbledore then shifted to a more positive note. I am pleased to announce the addition of 2 new teachers to our faculty this year. The announcement of Hagrid as the new Care of Magical Creatures professor was met with thunderous applause from Gryffindor, causing Hagrid to blush and smile shyly, his face partially hidden by his unruly black beard. Next, we have Professor Lupin, who will be taking over as the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. The applause this time was more subdued. After 2 less than reliable professors, Quirinus Quirrell and Gilderoy Lockhart, the students had learned to be wary. Professor Lupin's worn appearance did little to instill confidence, despite the support from those who had witnessed his capabilities on the train. Snape's presence only added to the tension, his almost murderous glare seeming to take note of every student who applauded, which further dampened the enthusiasm. However, Ethan knew that Snape's behavior was not just about professional jealousy, but stemmed from a long-standing personal grudge dating back to their school days. All right, let's have a feast. Dumbledore's declaration marked the beginning of the new term, as golden plates and goblets before the students magically filled with food and drinks. The new semester had officially begun. Chapter 182, A Turbulent Start. On the first day of the new semester, Ethan woke up early, fully prepared to face the new semester's courses. However, upon arriving at the auditorium, he was met with chaos. Countless owls circled overhead, creating a scene reminiscent of the day Ethan had confronted Lockhart. These owls dropped letters, feathers, and various other items, wreaking havoc on the breakfast tables. Among the debris, a significant number of the letters were red howlers, a type of letter Ethan had unpleasant memories of from the previous semester's first breakfast. Amidst this chaos, only a few brave souls managed to continue their breakfast under the long tables, seeking shelter from the avian storm above. The rest had retreated to the foyer, overwhelmed by the situation. "What's happening?" Ethan couldn't help but exclaim. Zhang Chu, bursting with excitement, approached Ethan to share the latest gossip. "These are complaint letters from parents about the Dementor's unauthorized search of the Hogwarts Express yesterday. It's quite a spectacle," she said, barely containing her glee. She handed Ethan a copy of that day's Daily Prophet, which featured a visibly distressed Cornelius Fudge. Gone was his usual confident smile, replaced by a look of nervousness. The article detailed the cause of the uproar, Sirius Black's escape from Azkaban, and Fudge's subsequent decision to deploy Dementors in the hunt, framing it as a last resort. However, the article conveniently omitted the fact that the escape highlighted the poor management of Azkaban and, by extension, the incompetence of the Minister of Magic. The report praised the students of Hogwarts for their resilience, avoiding any mention of hospitalizations, as if it were a notable achievement. As if it's something extraordinary that no one was sent to St. Mungo's, Ethan thought, frustrated by the spin. The real credit, he knew, belonged to those who had actually repelled the Dementors, not to the political maneuverings of Fudge. "Fudge is going to be in big trouble," Ethan muttered. Marietta, standing nearby, added, "My mother told me he was the one who directly ordered the Dementors into Hogwarts. He'll have to take full responsibility." Ethan's thoughts turned to Jaina and others at the Ministry of Magic. He had hinted to Jaina before the school year that opposing the deployment of Dementors would be wise, even if it meant temporarily clashing with Fudge. As the Dementors continued to cause problems, Fudge's administration would increasingly lose favor. This could potentially elevate Jaina's position within the ministry, as foresight in political matters proved valuable. Ethan reflected on the situation, recognizing that Fudge's blunder had alienated not just the general wizarding population, but also influential pureblood families and high-ranking officials. In the wizarding world, where the community was small and children from all backgrounds attended the same school, such mistakes were not easily overlooked. Fudge, Ethan concluded, could not easily escape the consequences of his actions. This year, as he was in a hurry to get to class, Ethan only had a brief chat with Zhang Chu before he had to leave. Looking around the crowd, Ethan suddenly spotted Hermione waving at him excitedly. Approaching, he found her with Harry and Ron, all three enjoying a meal sent by Owlpost, a rare treat among the young wizards who still had breakfast. "What are you talking about?" Ethan asked as he joined them. There you are, Ethan. Haven't had breakfast yet? Eat up quickly. Hermione, without hesitation, they'd piled all the remaining food on a plate in front of Ethan. Oh, thanks, Ethan gratefully acknowledged, grabbing the bacon, eggs, and toast from the plate and stuffing a sandwich into his mouth. Harry and Ron protested loudly. We're not full yet, Hermione. You're too biased towards Ethan, they complained. Hermione, arms crossed, responded matter-of-factly. You two just haven't eaten enough, but Ethan is genuinely hungry. But you gave him too much. Ron eyed Ethan's sandwich and swallowed hard. That food could feed 2 people. Ethan has a big appetite, Hermione explained, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. In the past, this small amount of food was barely enough to get him halfway full. Her words revealed a deep understanding of Ethan's appetite. Watching Hermione gaze admiringly at Ethan as he devoured the food, Harry sighed, realizing the futility of arguing with someone so smitten. People just turn their backs on their friends to favor their loved ones. What can you do? He thought, deciding to change the subject. We were discussing course selection. By the way, Ethan, do you know what a divination class is like? You've asked the right person. I was planning to take a divination course, so I did some research, Ethan replied, finishing his last bite of bacon and folding the sandwich with the remaining ingredients. Then tell us, Ethan, Hermione urged. Ron, surprised, interjected, Aren't some people very confident in their choices? Why should we refer to Ethan's opinion? Hermione, visibly annoyed and blushing, was about to retaliate when Ethan intervened. In fact, I'm not very fond of divination classes. Professor Trelawney is quite unreliable. Her classes involve making tea, looking into a crystal ball, and then spinning nonsensical tales of impending doom. She enjoys scaring students with such things every year. However, every cloud has a silver lining. It's generally easy to pass the divination class exam. According to seniors, you just need to make up a prophecy about your own misfortune to pass. If it's about your misfortune, you might even score high. In summary, it's a useless course except for padding your transcript. On the other hand, arithmancy is challenging, especially for students from wizarding families due to its mathematical formulas. How could Hogwarts have such a professor? Hermione exclaimed, clearly displeased with professors who mislead students. To be fair to Professor Trelawney, divination is about metaphysics and talent. It's useless for those without talent, and most in the magical world lack it. I believe a course like divination shouldn't be offered in the 3rd grade, Ethan explained, understanding Hermione's thirst for knowledge, but also recognizing the role of talent. Seeing Hermione still upset, Ethan suggested, if you're interested in learning less metaphysical divination spells, I can teach you some prophecy school magic privately, which is guaranteed to be more reliable than this lauschizy divination spell. Really? Hermione's eyes lit up with excitement upon learning something new. It's a deal. Ron, however, shook his head in disbelief. I don't understand why you get so excited about learning something that doesn't even require exams. Harry nodded in agreement. After hearing Ethan's explanation, he had already decided to enroll in a divination class. Clearly, Hermione's enthusiasm for learning surpassed that of her 2 friends. Suddenly, Harry remembered something and turned to Ethan. You've also chosen the Care of Magical Creatures class this semester, right? Of course, Ethan replied. But that's mainly to support Hagrid. To be honest, I don't have high expectations for his class. Harry's smile turned awkward upon hearing Ethan's candid assessment. Recalling the textbook Hagrid had chosen, the Monster Book of Monsters, Harry couldn't help but think Ethan's judgment was spot on. Since Ethan had eaten all the breakfast, Harry and Ron left early to scavenge for food in the Hogwarts kitchen, leaving Ethan with Hermione. Before they departed for class, Ethan remarked, Hermione, you really should learn some time management skills from me. Yes, no one is better at time management than you, managing to befriend 3 or 4 girls at the same time, not to mention charming a few younger girls along the way, Hermione retorted with a hint of sarcasm. She was well aware of Ethan's antics on the carriage the previous day, though she wondered who had spilled the beans. Then, somewhat taken aback, clarified, I meant that if you want to outperform me academically, you need to be more selective with your classes instead of taking them all. For instance, choosing between divination, arithmancy, and Muggle studies. I'd recommend arithmancy. You've noticed? Hermione asked, surprised. How did you know I applied for a time turner? Not only did I know, but I also figured out you're already using it, Ethan said, pushing up his imaginary glasses. Certain details gave you away. For example, you knew in advance there was no breakfast class, yet you were doing your divination homework. It's all about deduction. I see, Hermione exclaimed, finally understanding. Ethan glanced at the amulet around Hermione's neck, then advised, if you must use the time turner, make sure to eat more and bring extra food. You're not just attending one class between breakfast and lunch, you're attending 3, which is practically like going from breakfast to dinner without eating. It's crucial to prepare in advance, or you'll feel miserable after a whole day of classes. Realizing the importance of Ethan's advice, Hermione quickly left to find food in the kitchen, just like Harry and Ron. Ethan's suggestion was indeed vital for her. Without it, she would have been famished by noon. Watching Hermione rush off, Ethan smiled mischievously. In reality, Hermione had made the same mistake as Harry and Ron on the train. She hadn't revealed her use of the time turner because of Ethan's deductions, but because she wore the amulet Ethan had crafted for her last semester. The amulet contained a teleportation rune drawn by Ethan himself, allowing him to sense its presence from afar. Now, Ethan could feel 3 identical runes, one in the direction of the kitchen, another towards the Gryffindor lounge, and the third at the auditorium's entrance. It was unusual for the normally astute Hermione to overlook such a detail. Ethan hurried toward the kitchen after using the time turner for the first time to attempt a complex triple conversion spell, only for things to go awry. Upon entering, he encountered 3 people waiting for the house elf to finish cooking. Hey, Ethan, what brings you here? Haven't you eaten enough already? Hermione asked, surprised to see him. I'm already full, Ethan replied as he ordered food from the elf, but a certain little fool hasn't had her fill yet. I'm here to rectify her mistake. Silly goose? She? Hermione's brow furrowed upon hearing this. Is it that girl you tricked before, and now you're personally preparing a meal for her? Detecting the strong undertone of jealousy in Hermione's voice, Ethan couldn't help but feel both amused and irritated. Haha, if you can, try saying that to me again at noon today. Why? If you can do such things, why shouldn't I say it? Hermione retorted, her anger flaring. Just wait, I'll speak to you in the same manner even at noon. One word is settled then. Whoever lies is a puppy. Nearby, Harry and Ron overheard the exchange between the two and couldn't contain their excitement, anticipating a dramatic showdown at noon. Chapter 183. Okay, Hermione, eat slowly and don't choke. No one is going to compete with you for the cake, Ethan said, watching Hermione devour the cake in front of her. Before he could finish his sentence, Hermione swallowed a mouthful of cake, then clutched her chest, making a choked sound. Ethan quickly patted her back, and after a while, she managed to catch her breath. It was his first time interacting with someone using a time turner, and he found the experience fascinating. Just a few minutes ago, Hermione seemed to have little appetite, yet now she was eating with even more gusto than Ron. Ethan, how did you know I was here? Hermione asked, looking up after taking a sip of water. Ethan smiled slightly. Although I've never used a time turner myself, when it comes to managing time, you're not as adept as I am. Didn't I remind you to prepare more food? Why are you still so hungry? Ethan asked, puzzled. It's your fault, Hermione replied, sounding aggrieved. I got so angry after our argument in the kitchen that I stormed off without taking any food. Now, I'm using the time turner to come back for it. Only to remember that you were already in the kitchen when you first used the time turner? Ethan completed her thought. Hermione nodded, looking embarrassed. It was rare for a high IQ academic like her to show such vulnerability, almost making Ethan laugh. Indeed, planning the use of a time turner in advance could confuse even the brightest students. The process was actually quite simple. Hermione had missed breakfast due to the chaos in the cafeteria that morning. After her divination class, she used the time turner for the first time, returning to before breakfast. She managed to secure some food before the owls arrived. After sharing with Harry and Ron, Ethan reminded her to prepare more food before heading to her arithmancy class. Following that, she used the time turner again to attend Muggle studies, then transfiguration, effectively having a whole day's worth of classes, but only one meal. No wonder she was famished. Planning to eat again when using the time turner for the second time, Hermione realized she had already been in the Great Hall during the previous cycle, so she dared not enter to avoid being seen by her past self. The Ministry of Magic had imposed strict rules on time turner use due to the potential chaos in the timeline from such encounters, despite the user's rationality. Ethan had always steered clear of time turners because of this very rule. Knowing himself well, he understood that any slight overlap in his actions across different timelines would be easily detected by his keen perception. Returning to the matter at hand, when Hermione thought about her day, she realized the complexity of managing multiple timelines and the importance of planning ahead to avoid the pitfalls she had encountered. Ethan arrived just in time with food, averting Hermione's potential hunger crisis. "Hermione, I've always considered you the brightest witch at Hogwarts. Why did you make such a silly mistake this time?" Ethan teased, unable to hide his amusement. "It's all your fault. Why did you have to hug someone in public?" Hermione retorted, rolling her eyes at Ethan. Her blunt accusation left Ethan puzzled. "You accused me of seducing a young girl yesterday, and I reluctantly accepted that. But when did I ever hug someone in public? Could it be that a future version of me, using a time turner, did this?" Ethan pondered, then noticed the teleportation rune on Hermione's amulet, which helped him piece everything together. Hermione's initial use of the time turner meant she didn't have to spend so much time in the auditorium. She could have grabbed her breakfast and left, allowing her future self to eat as well. However, her real motive for lingering was to confront Ethan and identify the girl he was seen cuddling with. Unfortunately, she didn't succeed and ended up in her current predicament. Ethan understood the situation, but chose not to confront Hermione about her suspicions. Instead, he smiled and said, "Everything will make sense by noon, and then you'll be as loud as a barking dog." "Why noon? What do you mean by that?" Hermione asked, her curiosity piqued as Ethan gently wiped the corner of her mouth. She didn't pull away. Instead, she gazed at him with a mix of affection and frustration. Shifting the conversation, Ethan asked, "How do you find the arithmancy class compared to divination?" "Much better than divination," Hermione replied enthusiastically. "The trigonometric functions you taught me have been really useful. Professor Vector appreciates my mathematical skills, saying it's rare among young wizards." She then expressed her dissatisfaction with the divination class. "I was confused the whole time and had to guess on many occasions. Professor Trelawney seemed more like a magician than a seer." Ethan advised, "Don't worry about that class. Just make up a prediction for the final exam." Hermione still felt wronged. Professor Trelawney also said, "I have a very faint aura, poor receptivity to future resonances, and no talent as a witch." "As a top student, you're well regarded by professors in other subjects. This must be the first time you've received such feedback," Ethan noted, understanding her frustration. "It wasn't even a confrontation," Hermione insisted, clarifying her interaction with Professor Trelawney. Angrily, "It's the pattern of tea leaves. She thinks Harry's tea leaves are a sign of something bad, but I don't think so." "Oh, it's uncertain." Ethan felt very happy. "So, who does she predict will die this year?" "Trelawney predicts the death of one person every year. This is her specialty." "It's Harry," said Hermione. "Sure enough, it was him." Ethan nodded. "Just look at Lockhart, and you'll see that the more famous a person is, the more suspenseful the prediction will be, attracting more attention from all the students. Trelawney's death prophecy every semester is a gimmick in itself, an advertisement that attracts young wizards. After all, how can there be a death prophecy that doesn't provide a date of death? That's as good as having no prophecy at all, since eventually everyone dies." "I have now begun to consider not taking divination classes in the future," Hermione said, her mood lightening again. "But the next class is Muggle Studies. I think it will be interesting to see the Muggles' perspective from wizards." "So, you are conducting research on how wizards study Muggles. How do wizards study Muggles?" Ethan couldn't help but complain. Being a Muggle-born wizard and going to study Muggle studies is either an easy class or a kind of nested research. If you think so, you're right. Hermione always felt that Ethan's statement was very astute, but after thinking about it, she couldn't find fault with his summary. The two chatted for a while, and Hermione planned to go to class, but before leaving, she wanted to clarify one issue. Ethan, who was the girl who hugged you before? Just tell me. I swear, I will never be angry, Hermione said with a kind expression on her face. Why haven't you figured it out yet with your smart mind? Ethan couldn't help laughing out loud. But you'll probably understand soon. As he said that, Ethan suddenly hugged her in his arms, then turned around and faced away from the corridor. At the same time, a familiar voice came from the other side of the corridor. Ethan, what are you doing there? Hermione's body stiffened suddenly. She knew that voice all too well. That was her own voice. Only then did she remember that this was her earliest version of herself, when she had just left the Gryffindor common room and was heading to the Great Hall for breakfast. If Ethan hadn't stepped between them in time, she would have been seen by her past self. This time you know the dangers of the time turner, Ethan said with a smile. Remember to bark like a dog at noon. As he said that, he silently cast an advanced invisibility spell, causing Hermione's figure to disappear into thin air. Hermione, now invisible in his arms, immediately left quickly, and the Hermione behind her also quickly caught up. She looked around to the west, but couldn't find anyone and said, Ethan, where was that girl just now? Who is she? Of course, Ethan couldn't break the time loop, so he had to say, sorry, our secrets at that time cannot be revealed for the time being. Hermione said, oh, lowered her head, and was silent for about 2 seconds. Suddenly, she took out her wand and pointed it at Ethan. Activated Rope 6. Chapter 184. Ethan and Hermione didn't have to wait until lunchtime to see each other, as Ravenclaw and Gryffindor shared the second period Transfiguration class. Upon seeing each other, Hermione quickly lowered her head, overwhelmed by shame. She had come to a realization that she had misunderstood Ethan. Her doubts about hookups and cuddling were actually reflections of her own insecurities about her future self. She acknowledged that she had brought this misunderstanding upon herself. Today's lesson was an introduction to becoming an animagus, a complex spell that Professor McGonagall didn't expect third-year students to master. The professor's transformation into a tabby cat, complete with spectacle markings, was met with enthusiastic applause. The demonstration inspired the students to take the study of becoming an animagus seriously, despite realizing the significant challenges ahead. The process, starting with holding a mandrake leaf in one's mouth for a full month without swallowing or losing it, was daunting. Moreover, the first transformation required specific conditions, such as a suitable thunderstorm, making it nearly impossible for a student to achieve. Ethan, who had already learned the basics of animagus transformation and druidic wild transformation, paid close attention to the lesson. He understood the importance of mastering this knowledge, especially since several of his female friends had become animagi without possessing druid talents. After class, Ethan approached Hermione, who was visibly guilt-ridden. Under his insistence, she agreed to fulfill their agreement, but suggested changing the dog's bark to a cat's meow, citing her new cat as a reason. Her soft meow left Ethan struggling to maintain his composure, and Hermione avoided him for the rest of the afternoon. It wasn't until after dinner that Hermione, Harry, and Ron approached Ethan. Hermione inquired if he had heard about a mysterious figure lurking around the Benlang territory. Ethan, initially confused, soon learned that Malfoy had been injured during Hagrid's class, and they planned to visit Hagrid. Ethan, considering Hagrid a friend, agreed to join, despite concerns for Harry's safety due to Sirius Black's escape from prison. Many believed Harry to be Sirius's primary target, leading professors to advise Harry to stay within Hogwarts' safety. However, Harry argued that the edge of the Forbidden Forest fell within the castle's boundaries and the Dementors' protection. Convinced, Ethan agreed, and they set out to uncover the truth behind the mysterious figure and Malfoy's injury, all while navigating the complexities of their friendships and the dangers lurking within and beyond Hogwarts' walls. He also knew that the betrayer was not black. There was no way this black dog could be harmful to Harry. If we leave now, we should have enough time to talk to him. The four people hurried to the gate, discussing everything that happened in class as they walked. Malfoy has been causing trouble for Hagrid ever since he took out the textbooks. Even though the clerk had explained how to open the Monster Book of Monsters, he pretended not to know and mocked Hagrid, Harry began. He also teased us about Harry and me passing out on the train, Ron added. Oh, can't you get to the point? Hermione said impatiently. Hagrid prepared a hippogriff for his first lesson, which is a magical creature with a danger level of XXX. Hermione expressed her dissatisfaction with Hagrid's choice. Hagrid asked us to try to greet a hippogriff named Buckbeak. Harry volunteered to step forward. Unexpectedly, Malfoy, wanting to make peace, ended up being scratched by Buckbeak for his disrespect. In fact, this is all Malfoy's fault, Ron reminded. Harry did a great job. I bet Malfoy wouldn't have dared to face Buckbeak if he wasn't jealous of Harry's success in riding Buckbeak. Ethan believed this. With Malfoy's cunning, he would never recklessly provoke such a dangerous creature unless jealousy clouded his judgment. Malfoy is indeed foolish, but I don't think he, Hagrid, should have introduced such a dangerous creature in the first place. Hermione voiced her opinion bluntly. Harry is so lucky that Buckbeak didn't break his neck. That's why Malfoy shouldn't have provoked Buckbeak by calling him a big ugly beast. He got what he deserved. Ron and Hermione were now at odds, each standing their ground. Harry, caught in the middle, looked annoyed. Their arguments were not a new occurrence. Aside from the incident with Malfoy's injury, Ron and Hermione had quarreled several times due to their pets not getting along. The four of them quickly crossed the wet grass to Hagrid's hut, knocked on the door, and heard a voice roar, "Come in." Inside, they found Hagrid sitting by his scrubbed wooden table, wearing only his shirt, with his hunting dog Fang resting its head on Hagrid's lap. It was clear at a glance that Hagrid had been drinking, evidenced by a tankard as big as a bucket in front of him. "I'm afraid this is a new record," Hagrid mumbled, taking a moment to recognize his visitors before speaking in a deep voice. "I don't think there has ever been a teacher at Hogwarts who only lasted one day." "You haven't been fired, Hagrid," Hermione exclaimed in surprise, unwilling to blame Harry and Ron. It seemed too quick for Hogwarts to dismiss a professor. Dumbledore was not known for such rash decisions. "Not yet," Hagrid replied sadly, taking another sip from his tankard, "but it's only a matter of time, isn't it, with Malfoy?" "How is he now?" Ron asked after they all sat down, concerned about the severity of Malfoy's injury. "Madame Pomfrey did her best to treat him," Hagrid said dully, "but he still claims it hurts and keeps moaning even with the bandages." "He's just pretending," Harry interjected immediately. "Madame Pomfrey can cure almost anything. Last year, she regrew half of my bones. Malfoy will try his best to make a big deal out of this." Needless to say, the school governors must have heard about it, Hagrid said sadly. "They think I was reckless. I should have introduced the hippogriff later, after something like the flobberworm. I thought I could handle the first lesson. It's all my fault." "Malfoy brought it upon himself, Hagrid," Hermione said sincerely. "We are all witnesses," Harry added. "You warned that if the hippogriff felt threatened, it would attack. It's Malfoy's own fault for not paying attention." "We need to tell Dumbledore what happened," Ron said. "Yeah, don't worry, Hagrid. We'll all have your back." "Cheer up, Hagrid. We are all looking forward to your class tomorrow," Ethan also encouraged. Tears flowed from the crow's feet of Hagrid's small black eyes. "After this happened, you are still looking forward to my class." "Ugh! Of course I'm interested in magical creatures, and in fact, I'm also interested in Buckbeak." Ethan smiled and patted Hagrid's arm. "But Hagrid, no more drinking. I think you need to make some preparations, like sending Buckbeak away or changing your courses. Malfoy would definitely not give up," Ethan suggested. "Hagrid, what Ethan said makes sense. You've had enough to drink," Hermione said firmly. She took the tankard off the table and went outside to pour the wine. "Ah, you may be right," Hagrid said, struggling to stand up from the chair, and followed Hermione outside the house with faltering steps. They heard a loud splashing sound. "What is he doing?" Harry asked uneasily when Hermione came in with an empty wineglass. "He put his head in the bucket," Hermione said, and put the big wineglass elsewhere. Hagrid came back. His long hair and beard were soaked, and he wiped the water from his eyes. Ethan subconsciously took a few steps back, a move that proved to be extremely wise. "Much better now," Hagrid said, shaking his head like a dog and splashing water on Harry and Ron. "I said, it's great that you came to see me, and Ethan, your suggestion is very good. Perhaps I could start with the flobberworms. They are very safe." "No, I don't recommend flobberworms either," Ethan quickly refused after hearing this. He himself also chose the class of protecting magical objects. Facing a group of flobberworms in a daze for a class would just be counterproductive. "So, then what should I choose?" Hagrid humbly asked for advice. After experiencing the blow of the Malfoy incident, he seemed to be more open to suggestions. "I personally feel that for a popular class, safety is the first factor, and the second factor is attraction," Ethan said eloquently. "Especially if you have just gotten into trouble and need to quickly prove your ability. In this regard, I recommend creatures such as bowtruckles, mooncalves, and fairies. They are not only safe but also look cute and lovable." "You should listen to Ethan, Hagrid," Hermione said with some pride. After Lockhart was captured last semester, Ethan personally gave us several defense against the dark arts classes. His classes were welcomed by everyone. He has experience. "Thank you, Ethan. I think I can search in the Forbidden Forest to see if there are any of the magical creatures you mentioned," Hagrid said, his confidence returning. He patted Ethan's shoulder with his big hand. Suddenly, his movements stopped, and he looked at Harry blankly, as if he had just realized Harry was there. "Oh, what are you doing here after dark?" Something suddenly occurred to him, which startled the four of them. "I just remembered that Harry can't run around after dark, and you three." Hagrid strode up to Harry, grabbed his arm, and pulled him to the door. "Sorry, I have to take you back to school. I don't deserve this," Hagrid said, worried and guilty at the same time. After returning to the castle and watching Hagrid's retreating back from the door, Harry was still a little worried. What do you think Malfoy will do to him? If you are really worried, it is better to look up the relevant laws and cases about magical creatures harming people. "I guess I'll need it soon," Ethan said before saying goodbye to the three of them and returning to the Ravenclaw common room. Chapter 185. The next day, it was Ethan's turn to attend the magical creatures class. He was delighted to find Hagrid in high spirits, no longer weighed down by sadness. Hagrid welcomed the young wizards from Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff with his booming voice, a familiar sound to all. "Everyone, gather around this fence and make sure you can all see me." Hagrid led them to a clearing outside the Forbidden Forest. "Now, the first thing we need to do is open your textbooks." He caressed the spine of the Monster Book of Monsters, and the book obediently opened its mouth. The students mimicked his actions, successfully opening their books without issue. "That's wonderful. You've all mastered the technique of opening this book. I find it quite fascinating," Hagrid remarked, his confidence in the class bolstered by this smooth start. However, the young wizard's curiosity was piqued by the sight of a hippogriff in a distant paddock, especially after hearing about Malfoy's incident. Hagrid cleared his throat and announced, "Today we'll be learning about fairies." A tiny creature, no taller than 5 inches and resembling a miniature human with wings, emerged from Hagrid's pocket and fluttered to his fingertips. Upon closer inspection, one could see its delicate face and the colorful insect-like wings on its back. Hagrid's large fingertips provided a comfortable perch for the fairy, which flapped its wings gently, captivating the young witches in the class. Fairies aren't particularly intelligent and usually inhabit woodlands or forest clearings. They're vain creatures and often allow themselves to be used as decorations by wizards. In fact, during Christmas, fairies frequently volunteer to adorn Christmas trees, Hagrid explained. Catching fairies is quite simple. You can build a beautiful treehouse and place it in the forest to attract them. Their vanity ensures they'll happily move in. He pointed towards the forest, sparking excitement among the girls who eagerly set out to create their own treehouses. Hagrid, pleased with the students' enthusiasm, carried the fairy around, showing it to everyone. What a beautiful little creature, don't you think? While the boys were also charmed, their attention was divided by the distant hippogriff, wary of approaching it after Malfoy's experience. Ethan quickly finished his treehouse without needing to physically build it. As a druid, he simply gestured, and branches and vines intertwined to form a beautiful abode. Venturing into the forest to seek fairies, the shrubs and bushes soon revealed their locations. The fairies communicated through high-pitched buzzing sounds, creating a lively atmosphere when gathered. As Ethan approached, the fairies fell silent for a moment before buzzing excitedly. Attracted by the natural aura of the druid, they didn't hesitate to approach him, even without seeing the treehouse. They circled Ethan, each trying to outshine the others. Ethan then revealed the exquisite castle he had crafted from branches and vines. The fairies instantly understood his intention, a castle eagerly awaiting its most beautiful inhabitants. Thus, a small beauty contest ensued in front of Ethan. After a spirited selection, 7 of the most stunning fairies, their wings spanning the colors of the rainbow, joyfully entered Ethan's castle. With this, Ethan successfully completed his task, winning the admiration of both the fairies and his classmates. The envious gazes of everyone were fixed on Ethan as the young witches hurried to get closer. They were eager to borrow Ethan's castle, hoping to attract fairies. Despite their cuteness, fairies had high aesthetic standards. The tree houses built by young wizards were often too rudimentary to entice fairies to take up residence. Ethan approached Hagrid, proudly presenting his wooden castle. "Great, Ethan, you've completed the task the fastest," Hagrid exclaimed, clapping his hands. After a moment of thought, he added, "I want to award 10 points to Ravenclaw." "Professor, may I request a different reward?" Ethan asked. In class, he addressed Hagrid as Professor, a gesture that delighted Hagrid immensely. It was a title of respect from a Ravenclaw genius. Among his peers, even Harry still referred to Hagrid by his first name. Ethan was the first to honor him with the title of Professor. "What would you like?" Hagrid asked, his enthusiasm evident. It seemed he would go to great lengths for Ethan, even capturing a fire dragon if requested. "Professor, I wish to interact closely with Buckbeak," Ethan said after some thought. He had carefully considered this request. Although he disagreed with Hagrid's decision to introduce such dangerous creatures in class, he felt it was important to demonstrate that hippogriffs were actually very friendly and that Malfoy was solely at fault. "This is a bit," Hagrid began, clearly embarrassed. "Don't worry, Professor. I can protect myself. Even chimeras and basilisks pose no threat to me," Ethan reassured him. "All right, but please be careful," Hagrid conceded, finding it hard to refuse Ethan's request. Thus, he led Ethan to the paddock. Many young wizards, curious about the commotion, abandoned their search for fairies and followed them. "How beautiful, isn't it?" Hagrid remarked, his tone filled with genuine admiration as he stood before the hippogriff. Unlike his comments about the fairies, it was clear that Hagrid held a deeper affection for the hippogriff, valuing its strength and beauty. The creature had the body, hind legs, and tail of a horse, but its front legs, wings, and head resembled those of an eagle. Its beak, sharp and steel-colored, complemented its large, bright orange eyes. The formidable talons on its front legs were half a foot long. A thick leather collar encircled its neck, secured by a long chain to the fence. Despite its majestic appearance, the sight of it alone in the vast enclosure was distressing. Hagrid tossed a large fish in front of the fence, which Buckbeak caught and devoured with delight. "There used to be many here, but you're right. To prevent Malfoy's revenge, I sent them back to the Forbidden Forest." Only Buckbeak refused to leave, Hagrid explained, wiping his eyes discreetly with his palm when he thought no one was looking. "It is indeed beautiful," Ethan agreed, a sentiment echoed by the watching young wizards. Their initial fear of the half-horse, half-bird creature gave way to admiration for its shiny fur. "Professor, may I approach it?" Ethan asked, sensing it was the right moment to demonstrate his bravery with so many onlookers. "But, Ethan," Hagrid hesitated, still concerned about Malfoy's recent incident. However, before he could finish, Ethan stepped forward, discreetly releasing a druid's aura. Buckbeak immediately took notice, raising its head to look at Ethan curiously before gracefully walking towards him. "Buckbeak, this is my friend," Hagrid said, mistaking the creature's interest for aggression and moving to intervene. The students outside the paddock held their breath in anticipation. To their surprise, the hippogriff suddenly bowed, its scaly front legs bending in a gesture of respect. Ethan took the initiative, making an unmistakable bow to Buckbeak. It seemed that during their first meeting, Ethan was the one who was flattered. "Oh gosh, it seems to like you." Hagrid was a bit incredulous. He had never seen Buckbeak be so proactive. After all, before Ethan, he had never encountered anyone with a natural affinity for creatures like a druid. In response, Ethan also expressed his feelings towards Buckbeak by bowing slightly. Buckbeak was thrilled with Ethan's reaction, interpreting it as approval. Before Hagrid could untie it, the eagle eagerly approached Ethan and affectionately rubbed its big head against Ethan's chest. "Oh, good boy," Ethan murmured, stroking its head to offer comfort. "It really likes you," Hagrid said, wiping away tears of emotion as he removed Buckbeak's chain and leather collar. The students erupted in cheers. "Ethan succeeded. I knew he could tame this creature. He is the one who conquered the Chimer, a beast." I remember reading in the summer vacation newspaper that Ethan also participated in a dragon-slaying operation. Even Gryffindor's Harry Potter managed it, so there was certainly no chance of Ethan failing. It seems that Malfoy was injured because he was too arrogant. I really want to try it too. As Ethan successfully tamed the hippogriff, the young wizard's perceptions of Buckbeak and the previous day's incident instantly changed. Their admiration and excitement were palpable, marking a significant shift in their views. Update 6/4, additional update 360. A new month has arrived. I'm reaching out to you all for custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, reviews, and rewards. If you have any votes, please give them to me as the author. This is really important to me. Chapter 186. After spending some time comforting Buckbeak, Ethan eagerly mounted the hippogriff, eliciting envious glances from the young wizards watching. With practiced ease, Ethan grasped Buckbeak's feathers and secured his position by clamping his legs together, a technique he had learned from Hagrid. Sensing Ethan's cues, Buckbeak spread its majestic wings, launching them into the sky. The ride, though less smooth than a broomstick, was thrilling. Under Ethan's guidance, they soared around Hogwarts Castle, gliding over the lake and hills and ascending towards the clouds. They circled the castle several times before Buckbeak gracefully landed, bowing to allow Ethan to dismount easily. This flight fostered a silent bond between Ethan and Buckbeak, culminating in a tender moment where Ethan affectionately patted the hippogriff's beak and Buckbeak rested its head on Ethan's shoulder in contentment. Ethan mused on the unique joy of flying, whether by broom, transformation, or on the back of a magical creature like Buckbeak, understanding Hagrid's fondness for these magnificent beings. Among the magical creatures Ethan had experienced, including unicorns, centaurs, and eagles, Hagrid's care was unparalleled. Ethan pondered the thrill of riding a dragon, considering a future flight on Onyxia in her true form. Meanwhile, at the Ministry of Magic's Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, Fire Dragon Research and Restriction Bureau, Miss Presto sneezed amidst a conversation with colleagues, prompting an offer of hot coffee. She dismissed the notion of a cold, humorously suggesting someone might be speaking of her. Upon returning to the paddock, Ethan was greeted with admiration by the young wizards, his feat with Buckbeak sparking envy and awe. With Ethan's encouragement, many were able to interact with Buckbeak, transforming Hagrid's previously criticized class into a triumph. Ethan's influence as a key opinion leader at Hogwarts was undeniable. The anticipation for the Defense Against the Dark Arts class was palpable among Ravenclaw students, eager to experience Professor Lupin's teaching following glowing reviews from Gryffindor and Hufflepuff students. The humorous defeat of a boggart dressed as Snape in grandmother's attire by Neville had set a high bar, leaving Ravenclaw students both curious and excited. Snape, however, found no humor in the incident, his disdain for Professor Lupin evident in his menacing glares. As Ethan entered the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, the atmosphere was abuzz with anticipation. Professor Lupin arrived shortly after, his demeanor transformed from its usual pallor to one of readiness, signaling the start of what promised to be an engaging lesson. He was smiling genuinely, his once ragged appearance now replaced by a healthier complexion, likely the result of several good meals. "Good morning," he greeted warmly. "Please put your textbooks back in your bags. Today, we'll have a practical class. All you need is your magic wand." Malfoy and his Slytherin cohorts couldn't resist whispering snide remarks about Professor Lupin's robes, comparing them unfavorably even to the attire of their house elves. Yet, what caught the Ravenclaws off guard was Professor Lupin's unexpected gentleness. He merely cast a brief, light glance at Malfoy, choosing not to engage further. "Okay," Professor Lupin announced, seeing that everyone was prepared. "Come with me." The students, puzzled yet intrigued, rose to follow him out of the classroom. He led them through the deserted corridors, rounding a corner to encounter Peeves, the castle's most notorious prankster, heading straight for them. To everyone's surprise, Peeves turned tail and fled at the sight of them, a rare instance of the prankster being outwitted, thanks to Professor Lupin's adept use of a launching curse to block Peeves's nostrils previously. Continuing on, Professor Lupin brought the students to a halt outside the staff lounge. "Go in," he instructed, opening the door and stepping aside. The lounge, a lawn, room with wooden paneling and filled with mismatched chairs, was empty of teachers. The students filed in as Professor Lupin explained, "A big thank you to the professors, who are very supportive of Defense Against the Dark Arts and have set aside this lounge just for our use." He then directed them towards an old wardrobe at the far end of the room. As they approached, the wardrobe began to shake violently, startling several students. "There's no need to worry," Professor Lupin reassured them. "There's a boggart inside." The mention of a boggart, a creature well known for its ability to take the form of a person's worst fear, made the atmosphere tense. Despite the bravado often displayed by Gryffindor and Hufflepuff students, the reality of facing a boggart made even the Ravenclaws and Slytherins nervous. "Oh, Professor Trelawney said something bad might happen to me this week," Padma Patil exclaimed, looking at Professor Lupin with wide eyes. Malfoy, too, seemed unnerved by the rattling cabinet. "Boggarts like dark, enclosed spaces," Professor Lupin explained. "Closets under the bed, the cupboard under the sink. I once encountered one living in a grandfather clock." Now the first question we must ask ourselves is, what is a boggart? Professor Lupin surveyed the room, his gaze eventually following the students to Ethan. It seemed that, despite most of his classmates likely knowing the answer, they deferred to him out of respect, a tradition among Ravenclaws that also acknowledged his status within the house. Professor Lupin, acknowledging this dynamic, turned to Ethan. "It seems you're the one to answer this question." Ethan, momentarily taken aback by the attention, composed himself before responding. "Boggarts are a unique type of magical creature, distinct from most others. The latest research indicates that Dementors and pranksters, like the Peeves we just encountered, are all manifestations of emotional power." After Ethan finished speaking, he paused and then added, "Boggarts can peer into people's hearts and morph into their greatest fears. Their aim in scaring people is to feed on human fear, somewhat akin to Dementors who feast on happiness. Thus, Boggarts are considered entities of dark magic." In Ethan's understanding, however, the magic of the boggart extends beyond this. The boggart's transformation is not truly a physical alteration, but an illusion. Its transformation is fundamentally illusory and counterfeit. Yet, to a certain degree, the boggart's transformation can have tangible effects. For instance, while the moon or werewolves transformed by a boggart may not be real, and though boggarts cannot actually absorb happiness like Dementors, they can still maximize the elicitation of fear. In essence, there's a fascinating interplay between pretense and reality. Professor Lupin, nodding in approval, said, "As expected of the candidate, Mr. Green's breadth of knowledge is impressive, encompassing even the latest research on boggarts. Everyone should take a leaf out of his book, especially those in Ravenclaw." The Ravenclaw students, accustomed to such praise, smiled and began to harbor a fondness for this professor, who, despite being considered the least fortunate at Hogwarts, was fair and generous with extra points. Therefore, the boggart residing in this dark cabinet has yet to assume a specific form, as it remains unaware of the fears of those outside the cabinet door. No one knows what a boggart looks like when it is alone, but as soon as I let it out, it will immediately become what each of us fears the most, Professor Lupin cautioned the young wizards. Even the Slytherins paid close attention, none wishing to face embarrassment in front of their peers. That said, Professor Lupin continued, We have a significant advantage over the boggart. Have you figured out what this advantage is? This time, Ethan did not raise his hand, but the other Ravenclaw students began to show initiative. Professor Lupin appeared pleasantly surprised. It seems Ravenclaw has undergone quite a transformal tie-in since my days as a student. It's refreshing to see you taking the initiative rather than remaining passive observers as I did during my time at school. It was clear to everyone present that this shift was influenced by Ethan. Chapter 187. Next, Lupin chose Morag McDougal. I think it's because there are so many of us. It has difficulty choosing and doesn't know what shape it should take. Morag shared his thoughts. Very correct, Professor Lupin agreed, awarding him 2 points. When dealing with boggarts, it's best to go in groups. This confuses it. Should it turn into a headless skeleton or a flesh-eating slug? I once saw a boggart make this mistake. It tried to scare 2 people at once and ended up turning itself into half a slug, which was not scary at all. Then he picked up his wand. The spell to repel a boggart is very simple, but it requires strong willpower. Laughter is what truly defeats a boggart. You need to force it into an image that you find funny. Let's practice the spell without the wand first. Please say after me, ridiculous. Ridiculous? The whole class echoed. Very good, said Professor Lupin. But that's the easy part. The incantation alone is not enough. Who wants to be the first to try? Everyone hesitated, not wanting to be the first to reveal their fears. Ethan sighed, wanting to volunteer and set an example. However, Professor Lupin shook his head. No, Mr. Green, I have no doubt you can defeat a boggart, but I think you're more suited to be the person who ends it. Would anyone but Ethan like to try? Professor Lupin asked, a hint of concern in his voice. Take a moment now to think about what you're most afraid of, and then imagine how you might make it ridiculous, he instructed as the classroom fell silent. Ethan pondered. What am I most afraid of in this world? If I let go of my hidden thoughts, what form would the boggart take? He realized he didn't know much about his own fears and was curious about what they might be. Perhaps a boggart could help him discover them. After a while, Professor Lupin asked, Is everyone ready? Who will come first? Ethan's roommate, Steve Cornford from Ravenclaw, stood up. Known for his carefree nature, Steve didn't lack courage. Great, Steve. Let's all step back and give him space, Professor Lupin said, organizing the students. Ethan noticed something and glanced at Lupin in surprise. If Professor Lupin could call Steve by his name because they had met by chance on the train, then knowing his name now meant he had prepared in advance. This attention to detail showed he was a dedicated teacher, possibly the best defense against the dark arts professor they had had so far. The students moved back, leaving Steve alone in front of the closet. His face was pale, but he stood his ground. I'm counting to 3, Steve, Professor Lupin announced, aiming his wand at the wardrobe. 1, 2, 3, go. Sparks flew from the wand's tip, striking the closet door handle. The door swung open, revealing a green monster on all fours that crawled out and hissed at Steve, sounding like a lit fuse. It moved stiffly towards him, the hissing growing more intense as if it was about to explode. Steve, say the curse! Kevin, another roommate, yelled. Regaining his composure, Steve stepped forward, aimed at the creature, and shouted, Ridiculous! In the next moment, the creature sprouted a pair of comical cat ears and a tail, transforming the terrifying image into something utterly ridiculous. Behind its buttocks, it crawled around on the ground as if it was frightened by its own appearance. Here you go. Next up, Padma, Professor Lupin shouted. Inspired by Steve's courage, Padma Patil gritted her teeth and rushed forward. Snap! The mummy disappeared, and in its place, a giant cobra appeared. It lay on the ground, raised its head high, exposed its fangs, and stared at Padma, hissing menacingly. Before it could strike, Padma screamed and released the magic spell. Funny, funny! The cobra lunged at her, but stumbled and tied itself in knots. As Padma fell to the floor screaming, the sight of the cobra trying to untangle itself and getting more entwined caused the students to burst into laughter. Professor Lupin then called out, Draco Malfoy. Encouraged by the success of the students before him, Malfoy stepped forward eagerly, only to be confronted by a hippogriff. It raised its sharp claws towards Malfoy, who, in a panic, stumbled over the spell. Slippery, slippery, funny. Funny. The spell was not powerful enough, and the boggart transformed again, this time into Ethan Green himself, staring at Malfoy fiercely as if to say, "Do you want to be turned into a toad by me again?" Everyone was immediately surprised, their eyes darting between the two Ethans. At that moment, another hand patted Malfoy's shoulder. Turning around, Malfoy saw Ethan standing behind him. "Am I really that terrible?" the two Ethans said in unison. Malfoy's face turned red, and he screamed, running out of the door. His farce caused a burst of laughter among the students, making it clear that the person Malfoy feared the most was Ethan Green. The little wizards from Ravenclaw and Slytherin continued their attempts, facing boggarts that turned into spiders, mummies, giants, and other forms. The most terrifying transformation was for Terry Boot, a Dementor, and the strangest was for Daphne Greengrass, whose biggest fear was seeing her sister turn into a fox. Ethan gave Daphne a meaningful look. While the other students were puzzled, he understood that this fear stemmed from the Greengrass family's inherited blood curse, which Astoria Greengrass, unfortunately, contracted. Those infected by the blood curse can transform into blood-cursed orcs, becoming an animal in an irreversible process. As the curse progresses, the infected individual will eventually remain in animal form forever, a truly dreadful fate. Finally, Professor Lupin said, "Ethan, come forward and face it." All the students looked at Ethan with great anticipation, eager to discover what he, who seemed so excellent, knowledgeable, and powerful, was afraid of. Ethan nodded and stepped forward. With a snap, the boggart transformed into a series of frightening images: a bloody eyeball, a bomb, a spider, and a corpse, spinning faster and faster in the middle of the classroom. Yet, Ethan remained unmoved, seemingly unaffected by the boggart. Everyone turned to Professor Lupin, hoping he could explain the situation. Lupin was impressed. "Actually, there's another way to deal with a boggart, which is a clumency. This complex and profound magic seals the mind to resist magical invasion and influence, preventing the boggart from reading Mr. Green's inner fears. Clearly, Ethan has remarkable occlumency skills." Of course, Ethan wasn't using occlumency, but whether it was thought concealment or thought barrier, the effects were similar. All the students looked at Ethan with admiration, reaffirming his exceptional abilities. "Ethan, you are truly the most gifted student I have ever met," Lupin said, then added, "But why not try and see what you are afraid of? The best way to eliminate fear is to face it." Facing Professor Lupin's earnest words, Ethan almost expected the next sentence to be, "Persistence is victory. Come on, Ollie." However, what Professor Lupin said resonated with him. Ethan found himself curious about the nature of his fear. Moreover, considering that everyone else had revealed their vulnerabilities, it seemed unfair for him to conceal his own. Chapter 188. After much deliberation, Ethan lifted the thought barrier he had been maintaining. In the next moment, the ever-changing boggart before him instantly took on a definitive form. The young wizards around him saw a huge three-dimensional picture frame materialize, a television, recognizable to all those of Muggle origin. The TV displayed a grainy image filled with static, showing a dry well from which a pale, ghostly hand suddenly emerged. Soon after, a female ghost, clad in tattered white garments and with long black hair, crawled out of the well and made her way towards the camera, getting closer with each movement. Then, astonishingly, she penetrated the screen and crawled out of the TV, her black hair cascading to the floor. Ethan met her gaze, the eyes hidden beneath the black hair, brimming with boundless malice and resentment, staring at him enticingly. Gig cluck cluck. The female ghost produced a sound akin to bubbles bursting in her throat, creating an eerie atmosphere. Many students screamed out loud, truly terrified by the apparition. Indeed, this female ghost exuded an evil aura, causing those she targeted to break out in sweat and feel chills down their spines. Ethan also recognized this nightmare from his childhood in his previous life. The entity before him was the infamous female ghost, the protagonist of The Ring, Sadako. The original Midnight Ring was released in 1998. None of the young wizards present recognized her, but they were all petrified by the sight. This female ghost possessed the malevolent powers typical of her kind, but what truly established her notoriety were two unprecedented abilities. One was the mimetic curse that could be spread through videotapes, affecting anyone who viewed them. The second was the ability demonstrated before Ethan. Sadako could crawl out of the screens of electronic devices. This novel type of female ghost, merging traditional elements with modern technology, took the world by storm upon her debut, dominating the global horror film market. Ethan had no doubt that if Sadako were real, she would wreak havoc across the world in a literal sense. Normally, Ethan wasn't frightened by horror movies, but Sadako was an exception, being the only horror film he watched as a child. In the world of Harry Potter, Ethan had never been scared by the ghosts of Hogwarts, not even the Bloody Baron, whom the students feared the most. The other ghosts seemed rather endearing to Ethan, especially Helena, the ghost of his own house, who was not only beautiful, but also presented him with her mother Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem, a great honor for the family. However, facing Sadako now, Ethan felt a flicker of fear, but soon he devised a strategy to confront her. "I'm just worried about teaching the children bad habits," he thought. "Funny, funny," Ethan exclaimed. Suddenly, Sadako found herself swelling as if inflated by air. The once gaunt girl transformed into a voluptuous beauty with a sexy figure. However, due to her enlarged size, she became stuck in the TV screen's frame, unable to move and only able to cry out loudly. The transformation from a terrifying female ghost to a sexy and cute girl left the young wizards dumbfounded, especially the boys. Lu Ping acted swiftly, shoving the TV into a closet and shutting the door. "Great spells and imagination," Professor Lupin remarked, looking at Ethan with a complex expression, "but perhaps next time, imagine something less mature." However, the young wizards had already made their feelings known. The girls blushed and avoided looking at Ethan, while the boys clapped, screamed, and cheered as if Ethan were their hero. Even the Slytherin students joined in the celebration. Indeed, it seemed that people always come together over shared excitement. In this unexpected turn of events, Ethan had not only dispelled the fear, but also brought a moment of levity to the class, showcasing the power of imagination and spellwork, albeit with a reminder of the need for appropriateness. In the charged atmosphere, Professor Lupin I concluded the Defense Against the Dark Arts class, assigning a 7-inch paper on boggarts as homework. Even after the class had ended, the young wizards continued to buzz with excitement over Ethan's method of handling boggarts, praising it as one of the most practical spellcasting techniques he had invented. "I believe that from now on, the young wizards at Hogwarts will approach boggarts with a new mindset," one student remarked. Ethan, however, did not join in the discussion. Instead, he quickly found a secluded corner to cast the mansion technique and retreated to the tower hidden within the demiplane. His haste was driven by the unexpected benefits he had reaped during the Defense Against the Dark Arts class, and he was eager to delve into his research. In the underground laboratory, Ethan reviewed his gains. "You have encountered the magical creature boggart, observed its shape-shifting abilities, and its power to blur the line between reality and illusion. This has led you to understand that the essence of the School of Illusion is the constant interplay between reality and illusion. You have mastered the School of Illusion specialization. Having mastered the specializations of all magical schools, you have begun to integrate this knowledge. As your understanding of magic deepens, you are bound to reach the limits of your arcane power. You have realized the unity of all schools. In this synthesis, you have achieved the advanced profession, Arcane Master, with your Arcane Master level increasing by +2. Arcane Master professional abilities include LV1, Arcane Magic Specialization, LV2, Junior School Ability, LV3, Preference for Super Magics 2, LV4, Attribute Points +2, LV5, Intermediate School Ability, LV6, Mastery of Creation, LV7, Preference for Super Magic X2, LV8, Attribute Points +2, LV9, Advanced School Ability, LV10, True Arcana. Arcane Magic Specialization integrates all schools of specialization, allowing you to learn the basic spells of each school upon leveling up. Primary School Abilities. Your study of arcane magic has granted you unique techniques from each school, including Protection, enhanced proficiency in dispelling spells and countering spells. Conjuration. Summoned creatures gain extra life. Divination. Spells requiring concentration can be cast without it. Charm Control. Charm spells maintain their effectiveness despite hostile actions. Evocation. Spells automatically avoid allies. Illusion. Illusions are more convincing and harder to discern. Undead. Summoned undead are more resilient against control and dispelling. Transmutation. Improved alchemy skills. Universal. The ability to summon a magical pet from any world, perfectly suited as your magical companion. Ethan had never anticipated that a routine defense against the dark arts class would lead him to acquire the last School of Illusion specialization, nor that it would enable such a groundbreaking advancement in his career. The Arcane Master profession, even at just level 2, offered a plethora of abilities, each a specialty in its own right, perfectly aligning with his vision for a versatile and comprehensive development. Compared to the so-called Kirin-Tor Archmage held by Jaina, this Arcane Master profession was undoubtedly superior. Ethan felt as though his strength had nearly doubled, emboldening him with the confidence that he could now face challenges that were previously beyond his reach. Ethan had reached a level where he could completely suppress Snape and even engage in a few battles with Voldemort without facing defeat. This achievement marked his official entry into the ranks of the powerful in the wizarding world. However, his top priority was to explore the general abilities listed under elementary school abilities. Reflecting on his journey since becoming a wizard, he realized he had never formed a contract with a magical pet, a fact highlighted by the image of Jen Dowsey. Chapter 189. The Quest for a Magic Pet. A familiar is a contracted creature that every mage can possess. For arcane spellcasters, investing time and money in a familiar is one of the wisest decisions. A familiar serves as the mage's lifelong companion, guard, spy, and servant. It is also the most trusted confidant and best friend of every spellcaster. Magic pets can assist their owners in various tasks, such as fetching small objects, peeking around corners, eavesdropping, and keeping watch while the caster sleeps. More importantly, magic pets create a magical link with their owners, allowing them to grow together. The most basic magic pets are ordinary creatures, such as cats, owls, and toads. The tradition of wizards keeping pets in the Harry Potter world originates from the instinct to pursue magic pets. Wizards and their pets share a special tacit understanding, but unfortunately, wizards in this world have not developed a way to truly link with their familiars. In addition to ordinary animals, some powerful spellcasters choose small magical creatures as their familiars. Examples include goblins, little devils, magic bats, pipe foxes, and fairy dragons. Spellcasters have gone to great lengths to obtain the strongest possible magic pet, with some even using young dragons. Ethan has always had the option to choose a magic pet to assist him in daily life and magic research. However, like those senior spellcasters, he does not favor using ordinary creatures as magic pets. Among the magical creatures in the Harry Potter world, there are not many suitable familiars. While elves, little devils, and fairies are considered intelligent, they lack special abilities. The fortune-telling bird, the catnivs, and the sniff are unique but do not aid in magic use, and the velvet seems more suited as a pet for wizard children. Now that Ethan had discovered a way to find a magic pet from another world, he was thrilled. Let's see what the most suitable magic pet for me is. Ethan began to use the magic pet summoning technique he had recently learned. After careful study, he realized that the pets summoned by this spell were not entirely random. He could adjust the bias of the summoning spell by adding specific casting materials. For instance, adding sulfur would favor the summoning of a fiendish creature, while feathers from Ethan's Quetzalcoatl could attract a more holy familiar. Ethan decided to add a little Onyxia's blood, hoping to summon a young dragon, or failing that, a fairy dragon. As the magic power converged, a whirlpool-like portal opened before him. Ethan could feel that the portal was not connected to a stable space, but to boundless chaos and endless plains. This was technically his second experience with the power of time and space that connects all realms, bringing back memories of his time traveling. Soon, Ethan sensed the spell's success as the portal vanished. However, nothing appeared in front of where the portal had been. Is this conveying loneliness? Ethan wondered. But he knew that wasn't the case. When casting the spell, he had felt a being transported from the other end of the portal. The absence could only mean some unknown interference had caused a transmission error, sending his magic pet to another location. Why did something go wrong at this time? Ethan was slightly self-critical, but felt fortunate. To be cautious, he had chosen to explore new powers within the safety of the demiplane tower. With this demiplane, he had a secure environment to continue his magical endeavors, undeterred by the setback in summoning his desired familiar. No matter how far the coordinates deviated, they would never extend beyond a certain limit. Outside the plane, the space within the demiplane was confined, so Ethan wasn't worried about losing his magical pet. Thus, he promptly exited the basement to commence his search within the demiplane. He began by tracing the river that encircled the demiplane, then meticulously combed through the forest, enlisting Larry's assistance in the search. Eventually, his efforts led him beneath an oak tree, where he was greeted by a youthful voice critiquing his demiplane. "This is indeed a pretty good place. At least this tree is nice, but the rest of it is rather dull. A stone house, a typical forest. It would be wonderful if there was a fountain brimming with jam, or perhaps a chocolate tree. Then, anyone passing by could simply break off a branch and enjoy it." "Who is speaking?" Ethan was taken aback. Since acquiring psychic powers, it was rare for anyone to approach him undetected. "It's me." A small purple dragon with iridescent wings appeared from behind Ethan, clearly enamored with the idea of a chocolate tree. "Such a cute little dragon has been following you, and you haven't noticed, have you?" Upon seeing the creature, Ethan immediately realized where the magical pet he had summoned had vanished to. It had, quite literally, been delivered to his doorstep. "Well, cute little dragon, if you've been following me, why didn't you speak up until now?" Ethan asked, adopting a tone akin to that used with children. "Maybe I'm a little shy? After all, we're strangers, and I wanted to explore and acclimate to this place. Everything in the other world is strange and far too serious." "This demiplane is particularly odd," the dragon commented without any hesitation. Ethan wasn't surprised by this perspective. Being a non-human, the dragon naturally viewed the world differently. "So you don't like it here?" Ethan inquired. "It's not that I dislike it. I can find plenty of amusement here, but I miss my home in Elysium," the dragon said, its expression turning whimsically pensive. "But since I've come here at your behest, this is now my home. Together, we'll make this place interesting, right?" Ethan, moved by the dragon's hopeful gaze, nodded in agreement. "If we're to be companions, the first step is to exchange names. My name is Ethan Green. What's yours?" The dragon tilted its head, responding, "My name is Iwu, because I'm still young. In our culture, the older we get, the longer our names become. It would be quite amusing otherwise. Imagine just hatching from an egg, being a mere 5-year-old, and everyone calling you Resarabrun or Ilsuriak." Ethan chuckled, imagining the scenario. It was his first encounter with such a tradition. Considering dragons' longevity, Iwu was indeed very young. "And where do you hail from?" Ethan continued. "Where did I come from? What do you mean?" "I flew here," Iwu replied, seemingly misunderstanding Ethan's question before clarifying. "Well, I didn't make it across the longest river by myself, but I managed the rest of the journey alone." Then, with excitement, she flew closer to Ethan. "You've always wanted a dragon companion, haven't you?" Who wouldn't want a dragon as a companion? Ethan surmised that the longest river Iwu mentioned was the chaotic gap between planes. It was unfathomable for her to have crossed such a boundary on her own, or for any creature to physically traverse through various worlds. "Anyone who says they don't want a dragon must be out of their mind," Ethan replied. He, Ethan Green, had always been fascinated by dragons. "I knew it," Iwu exclaimed, her spirits lifted by his response. "I never doubted it. If you hate dragons, I won't want to be friends with you. But even if you're a dragon hater, I'll change your mind." "Ah, your little dragon is indeed very confident. Yet she does have the grounds for such confidence." Ethan has a general understanding of her identity. From her appearance in her hometown, Elysium, it becomes clear that this little one is actually a carnival hatchling. Pictured is Iwu. Chapter 190, The Carnival Dragon. The Carnival Dragon, also known as the Catastrophe Dragon, stands apart from the traditional dragons like the 5-color dragons and metal dragons that inhabit the main material plane. This dragon is a native of the outer plane, making it a plane dragon. Such dragons often embody characteristics of their homeland and possess an ability known as plane assimilation. This ability allows them to transform their immediate surroundings into an extension of their home plane, effectively creating a special inherent barrier in the context of the Xingyue world. The outer plane, an auxiliary plane distinct yet connected to the main plane, boasts unique features. Mythological realms such as the world of gods, heaven, hell, and purgatory are considered part of the outer planes, assuming they exist. The carnival dragon hails from Elysium, a realm synonymous with eternal paradise and the epitome of nature's beauty. Elysium is a wild, law-free zone teeming with idealized natural splendor. In the mythology of the Blue Star, it is home to deities like Artemis and Aphrodite from the Greek pantheon, Ishtar from the Babylonian pantheon, and a host of fairies, nymphs, and tree spirits. Born in such a vibrant and free-spirited environment, the carnival dragon naturally exudes a cheerful and liberated demeanor. Its ability to momentarily evade Ethan's detection in a demiplane with a strong natural ambience is hardly surprising. The dragon boasts insect-like wings and scales that shimmer in a kaleidoscope of colors. Its tail, reminiscent of a whip, sways gracefully in the breeze, adding to its elegant and beautiful appearance. Adult carnival dragons possess enchanting singing voices and exceptional acting talents, making them joyful artists at heart. They can alter their physical form at will and wield psychic powers capable of spreading happiness to those around them. Their breath attacks include a sonic breath that physically impacts targets and a chaotic breath that muddles the mind. Additionally, they are immune to sonic attacks. As natural spellcasters, carnival dragons can wield a variety of arcane and natural spells. This makes a carnival hatchling an ideal familiar for Ethan, combining the elements of dragon, magic, natural power, and psychic ability, which align perfectly with Ethan's magical and professional pursuits. However, the young carnival dragon named Iwu is still a mere infant at 5 years old. It's unrealistic to expect a baby dragon to exhibit the full might of its species, but Iwu's potential is undeniable. When Ethan sees Iwu, no larger than a cat, looking up at him with hopeful eyes, he decides to form a bond. "Since you are my dragon, let us sign a contract," Ethan proposes. "Great! I've been waiting for you to say that!" Iwu responds enthusiastically, wagging its tail and moving closer to Ethan, who places his hand on the little dragon's head. In that moment, Ethan senses a profound connection forming between them, linking their magic, strength, and destinies. Suddenly, Iwu begins to grow, expanding from the size of a cat to that of a horse. Ethan is taken aback, having never heard of a carnival dragon possessing such an ability. Iwu, now significantly larger, exclaims excitedly, "Look, I've gotten bigger." "Beautiful, right? And I can already carry you on my back. My dragon friends in paradise will definitely be jealous of me." Ethan's familiar had only existed for a moment before transforming into a mount. Addressing Ethan's confusion, Xiao Iwu explained, "Dragons generally grow as they age, but I grow as your strength increases. So don't be fooled by my appearance. Despite being large, covered in scales, and capable of using plain magic freely, I am still just a child." Iwu emphasized her identity as a child, seemingly to coax more affection from her master. Ethan finally understood the situation. Under the familiar contract, Ethan and Iwu shared magical power, causing her abilities to synchronize with Ethan's. This synchronization forced her growth from a young G-dragon to an adult dragon. However, since Carnivalosaurus is a smaller dragon species, her adult form was roughly the size of a horse, which belied her true power. Should the contract expire, she would revert to her original size. The little dragon joyfully pranced around in her adult form, even offering Ethan a ride to fly for a bit. However, she soon grew tired of this and transformed back into her young dragon form, perching on Ethan's shoulder. She justified this by saying, "Because I am a baby, you should hold me." Her antics were both amusing and exasperating. Nonetheless, as a familiar, she proved to be incredibly helpful to Ethan. The magic pet possessed the ability for spell transmission, allowing Ethan to cast spells through her. Additionally, a lifelink existed between the familiar and its master, enabling them to share vitality. This feature might seem trivial with ordinary magic pets, but with Iwu, it was a different story. Despite being a smaller dragon, her vitality far surpassed that of her dragon peers, and certainly that of a human like Ethan. The lifelink effectively elevated Ethan's vitality to a level beyond human, to that of a human plus dragon. With such enhanced vitality, Ethan mused that he could potentially confront Voldemort's avatar directly. Moreover, the familiar contract facilitated sense sharing and capability sharing between them. Not only could Aiwu share her master's magic, but Ethan could also utilize Aiwu's abilities. When necessary, Ethan could augment his arcane magic, natural power, and psychic powers with Aiwu's assistance. This made Aiwu the perfect magic pet for him, as few magic pets possessed these three powers simultaneously. When Ethan appeared in the Ravenclaw lounge with Aiwu, it caused quite a stir. Within a day, all the Ravenclaws knew that Ethan had a talking dragon. Even in a world filled with magical creatures, a talking pet was still a rarity. Ethan's recent surge in strength gave him the confidence to bring Aiwu out openly, ensuring no one could take her from him. After all, creatures cherish freedom. Aiwu had traveled great distances to be Ethan's magic pet and treated him well. As long as he was capable, Ethan felt it was only right not to confine her unnecessarily. As the new month arrived, the author eagerly requested support through custom orders, flowers, monthly tickets, comments, and rewards. "If you have tickets, please support me," the author implored, highlighting the importance of such support. Chapter 191, A New Friend in the Lounge. After the little dragon Aiwu appeared in the lounge, she immediately became a favorite among the young Ravenclaws. Both wizards and witches were charmed by her adorable appearance and lively, fun personality. The fact that she was a dragon was enough to captivate all the wizards. Consequently, whenever Ethan appeared with Aiwu, a crowd would inevitably gather around him, eager for a glimpse of the little dragon. Their enthusiasm was almost overwhelming for Aiwu. Looking around timidly, Aiwu suggested, "It's so scary here. How about we take these delicious things and find a less scary place?" Ethan, seeing the dormitory door blocked and the expectant eyes before him, realized he needed to act. He reassured Aiwu, "They just want to touch you because they think you're incredibly cute." Still hesitant, Ethan decided to use his trump card. He pulled a butter cookie from his pocket and said, "I have a sweet and delicious cookie here. It's for the most obedient ones. Do you want this cookie?" At the mention of a cookie, Aiwu's eyes lit up, and she eagerly stretched out her paw, pleading, Me, I want a cookie. Ethan, please, may I have one?" Ethan replied, "You can have a cookie, but first you must greet everyone properly." After handing her the biscuit, Aiwu bit into it with excitement, then addressed the crowd. "Hello, everyone. I am Ethan's magic pet, Aiwu. As you can see, I'm just a little dragon, still growing. So you can only touch me once, okay? Otherwise, I won't grow up." Her innocent voice melted everyone's hearts, and they agreed without hesitation. Thus Aiwu, content with her cookie, allowed the Ravenclaws to take turns feeling her delicate, cool dragon scales. From that day forward, the young wizards learned how to please Aiwu, making her the star of the Ravenclaw lounge. Whenever Ethan was present or off to class, Aiwu could be seen flying around, her antics endearing her to everyone, including Professor Flitwick, who found her particularly charming. His visits to the lounge became more frequent, often stopping to chat with Aiwu. Ethan soon found he no longer needed to worry about Aiwu's diet, as the Ravenclaw girls were always eager to feed her. With a dragon's robust constitution, indulging in sweets was hardly a concern. Aiwu would return daily with a hoard of snacks to share with Ethan. A week later, Aiwu remained in excellent health, though Ethan joked he was being indirectly fattened by her generosity. News of Ethan raising a little dragon spread beyond Ravenclaw, sparking envy and resentment, particularly from Draco Malfoy. Since a memorable defense against the dark arts class, Malfoy had been eager to overcome the humiliation Ethan had caused him. The revelation of Ethan's talking dragon only intensified his jealousy. Malfoy, whose name means dragon, had always been fascinated by them, even attempting to reconcile with Harry Potter for a chance to see a dragon up close. Now, faced with Ethan's unique companion, Malfoy plotted his revenge, though he dared not confront Ethan directly. The rumors that Ethan was afraid of female ghosts eventually faded away. However, Malfoy and his followers continued to mock Ethan by making ghostly gestures whenever his name was mentioned, aiming to ridicule him. Initially, Ethan didn't give much thought to their antics, but over time, Malfoy's taunting became increasingly irritating. Ethan decided it was time to teach him a lesson. Among the spells Ethan had learned from Iwu was one called dream casting, which could induce a dream in the target after they fell asleep. With a slight adjustment, this dream could be transformed into a nightmare. Thus, Ethan made it a point to walk slowly past the Slytherin table in the cafeteria, catching Malfoy's derogatory remarks about him. Jiang Chu, puzzled by Ethan's tolerance, asked, "Do you actually enjoy Malfoy and his group mocking you?" "Of course not. I'm not that forgiving," Ethan replied with a cold snort, hinting at his plan for revenge. Luna, observing Malfoy from a distance, remarked, "That's right, all thanks to Iwuwo." Xiaolong, who was close to Luna among the Ravenclaw students, praised Luna's unique charm and imaginative fantasies. "What did you do?" Jiang Chu inquired, raising an eyebrow. "Nothing much, just crafted a sweet dream about Sadako," Ethan said with a slight smile, revealing he had invisibly delivered the dream to Malfoy. "Sadako? Is that a new Japanese girl you've met?" Jiang Chu asked, slightly upset. Ethan quickly clarified. No. Malfoy always claimed I was afraid of female ghosts, right? Sadako is the name of a notorious female ghost, known for her long black hair and white dress. It's rare to find someone who isn't terrified of her. Black hair and white dress? Jiang Chu looked at her own hair and dress, feeling even more aggrieved. "Are you scared of me then?" "No, you've got it all wrong. Sadako is just a ghost," Ethan explained, sharing the story of Sadako to clear up any misunderstanding. Jiang Chu, understanding the context, agreed. "You're right. If I dreamt about such a ghost, I'd be terrified too. It seems Malfoy is in for a rough time." The next day, as Ethan passed the Slytherin table, Malfoy was noticeably silent and appeared disheveled. His platinum blonde hair was unkempt, his eyes were bloodshot, and dark circles marred his usually pristine appearance, indicating a lack of rest. After lunch, Malfoy left the auditorium with Goyle and Crabbe, looking worse for wear. Ethan whispered to Jiang Chu, who quickly adjusted her clothes and hair before discreetly exiting the auditorium. At the corridor's corner, an unsuspecting Malfoy encountered a figure with black hair and a white dress. He screamed in terror, shoved Goyle and Crabbe aside, and fled, leaving a trail of water behind him. Ethan, emerging from his hiding spot, laughed alongside Jiang Chu, who had donned makeup to resemble Sadako. Their plan had worked perfectly, turning Malfoy's mockery into his own nightmare. Chapter 192. After acquiring the little Iwu, Ethan Green's campus life seemed to become more enjoyable. The little creature always brought him all kinds of fun. However, there was one rule Ethan adhered to strictly. Except for the magical creatures class, he never brought Iwu to any other class. He was well aware that Iwu was the type to react to anything the teacher said, which meant bringing him along would result in being kicked out of the classroom, even though the professors considered Ethan an outstanding student. This semester, in addition to Hagrid's magical creatures class, Ethan chose 3 other subjects: alchemy, arithmancy, and ancient runes. Ancient runes proved to be the most challenging. None of his roommates had chosen this course, so he found himself attending with Hermione. Due to the low enrollment, the class was surprisingly small, with only 4 young wizards from the academy, including Ethan. Upon entering the classroom, they noticed its sparse attendance, and coincidentally, Malfoy had also chosen this subject. Ethan observed Malfoy's dark circles and bloodshot eyes, indicating his fatigue. Soon, Professor Bethsaida Babbling, who taught ancient runes, entered the classroom. She was a woman in her 30s, wearing glasses, a simple blue robe, and exuded a scholarly aura. Her eyes lit up upon seeing Ethan. "I'm honored that Mr. Ethan Green has chosen my elective course. With your level, ordinary classes wouldn't suffice," she said, clearly pleased. Ethan responded with a gentle smile. "No, I still need to attend 200 classes to study properly." "Oh, haha. It's truly an honor for you to say that. I doubt I can teach you much," Professor Babbling laughed, delighted by his humility. "On the contrary, if you find any shortcomings in my teaching, I hope you'll advise me. By the way, a master like you doesn't need to complete the homework meant for the average student. I'll grant you an O on the final exam directly," she added. Ethan's interaction with the professor left the other students in shock, especially Malfoy and his Slytherin companions, who reacted with mock disgust, deeming it blatant favoritism. Throughout the class, Professor Babbling led the students through reading, reciting, and copying several ancient runes. While they toiled, Ethan sat at his desk, engrossed in a book, an action that went unremarked by Professor Babbling. This elicited envious glances from the other students. Even under the eccentric Professor Snape, Malfoy had never witnessed such a scenario. It was clear that Professor Babbling regarded Ethan not just as a student, but as a peer or even a senior of higher status. As the class neared its end and Professor Babbling began assigning homework, which involved translating complex, awkwardly pronounced runes full of polysemy, Malfoy couldn't contain his frustration with the apparent disparity in treatment. "Professor Babbling, I really want to know why Green is exempt from these exercises," he demanded, voicing the collective discontent. They were struggling with translations, their minds nearly bursting with effort, while Ethan sat comfortably, leisurely flipping through books, with the professor attending to him personally, even setting a table for afternoon tea. Professor Babbling, visibly annoyed by the challenge, responded, "As a professor, I naturally have my own rules. In my class, the only rule is ability. Whoever can reach the specified level will not have to attend lectures or do homework," she declared, tearing off a piece of paper and quickly jotting down a paragraph in runes before placing it in front of Malfoy. "If any of you can translate this passage correctly, you'll receive the same privileges as Mr. Green." Malfoy scrutinized the paper, his interest piqued. Several eager young wizards also stepped forward, hoping to prove themselves, but the complex ancient runes before them were bewildering, leaving them utterly confounded despite recognizing the script. "Mr. Malfoy, can you tell me what this paragraph means? If you can, you'll enjoy the me privileges," Professor Babbling pressed, her challenge causing Malfoy to falter. He examined the note repeatedly, his frustration evident as his face flushed with the effort. Given his current level of proficiency, completing this task might take him the entire semester. "Why don't we see Green accomplish this?" Malfoy pondered, seeking a way out. "Because this is merely the most basic application of runes," Professor Babbling explained, pulling out a book titled A Simple Introduction to Ancient Runes. "This book can help you translate the passage. However, mastering ancient runes for practical use goes beyond this simple foundation. It requires a deeper understanding. But as far as I know, Mr. Ethan Green was already applying ancient runes in practical ways as early as the first grade," she added, addressing the room's disbelief. Malfoy was incredulous. "That's impossible. Ancient runes are complex. No matter how talented Ethan is, mastering them in the first grade is unthinkable." "You demand evidence?" Professor Babbling countered, her wand at the ready. "I recall a spell called Dancing Lights." With a flick of her wand, a luminescent orb burst forth, dancing around the room like a firefly. "Mr. Green's innovation with spells is well known. I'm thankful he shared this particular spell with me earlier. It's both simple and effective." She continued, "Magic spells, as we know them, are essentially combinations of ancient runes that have been modified and simplified over time. This process has made them more user-friendly at the expense of versatility. It's akin to software development, where ancient runes are comparable to C++. While Java libraries are complex and offer numerous interfaces for easy modification, a spell crafted purely from ancient runes is like a C++ program, robust but unwieldy due to its extensive functionality. To convert a rune-based spell into something practically usable, a significant simplification process is necessary. This involves stripping away all superfluous and modifiable elements, leaving only the essentials. It's similar to transforming a piece of software into a version suitable for embedded systems. The requirements for simplification and optimization vary greatly between these applications. Learning to cast spells doesn't necessitate an understanding of ancient runes. However, for those aspiring to create their own spells, ancient runes are indispensable." Professor Babbling's explanation resonated with the class, earning nods of agreement. Her comparison not only highlighted the complexity and potential of ancient runes, but also underscored the dedication required to truly master the art of spellcrafting. Ethan Green is indeed a master of ancient runes. Over the past few years, his friends have often seen Ethan use spells they had never heard of or seen before. For example, the Dancing Light spell he cast moments ago, and the Anti-Evil Magic Circle he used to drive away the Dementors on the train. Malfoy recalled another spell named activating rope, which brought back an embarrassing memory for him. He and 6 other senior Slytherins were tied up on the ground by Hermione, a young witch, using activating rope. It was a humbling experience. Finally, the professor concluded, everyone is just beginning to explore ancient runes, so don't set your ambitions too high just yet. I dare say that this is the most complex and difficult subject among all electives. However, it is also the most rewarding to learn and offers the greatest potential for mastery. You should now focus all your attention on learning how to translate runes, rather than questioning others' abilities. In fact, Mr. Green's expertise is more than enough to qualify him for the position of Professor of Ancient Runes. If he were to agree, I would be willing to study under him. After hearing the professor's words, Malfoy felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him. He realized that Ethan Green was his nemesis. Every time he thought he had found a flaw in Ethan, he ended up embarrassing himself instead. For the first time, the other young wizards understood the vast gap in skill level between them and Ethan. Standing next to Ethan, Hermione looked at him with even greater admiration. Chapter 193. Malfoy's situation was deteriorating due to the nightmares he was experiencing. It was rumored that he sought a tranquilizer from Professor Snape, thanks to the terrifying lady, Sadako, who haunted his dreams. In contrast, Hagrid, previously deceived by Malfoy, was now thriving. After Ethan's class, Hagrid's reputation improved significantly among the students of the other 3 houses, excluding Slytherin. Motivated by this newfound respect, Hagrid became more diligent in preparing for each Care of Magical Creatures lesson, aiming to further endear himself to the students. Hagrid learned to follow Ethan's guidelines for selecting creatures for his classes. He created a chart indicating the danger levels of various magical creatures, and chose only those from the least dangerous categories for his lessons. Thus, the students were introduced to enchanting yet harmless creatures such as the fairy, the moon-crazed beast, and the ball-escape bird. These creatures, being either adorable or fascinating, were unanimously adored by the students. Ethan, however, kept to himself the effort it took to convince Hagrid to exclude the Flobberworm and Hawklap from the curriculum, knowing their inclusion would render the class dull. As the course progressed, Hagrid's confidence grew, and his image among the students transformed from a simple half-giant to a knowledgeable and dependable nature enthusiast. Rumors even circulated among some of the young witches that Hagrid was quite a catch. Ethan found this notion peculiar. Slytherin House, which had been less enthusiastic about Hagrid's classes, remained relatively trouble-free. Despite Draco Malfoy informing his father Lucius about his injury, there had been no official complaint lodged with the Ministry of Magic, according to Onyxia, from the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. Onyxia, who was aware of Iwu's existence, expressed a keen interest in meeting the creature from another world, sending Ethan multiple letters. However, Ethan doubted Iwu would reciprocate her interest, given Onyxia's dubious past and Iwu's aversion to malevolence. As October's chill set in, Ethan's schedule became increasingly hectic with the approaching Quidditch season. The previous year's cancellation of several matches, including the Quidditch Cup due to the Chamber of Secrets incident, left the Ravenclaw team eager to claim victory. With this being Cyrilla's final year at Hogwarts, Ethan was determined to ensure it ended without regrets. The Ravenclaw team, fueled by ambition, trained rigorously 3 times a week, undeterred by the worsening weather. One evening, after a grueling training session, Ethan and Cyrilla, with Iwu trotting behind, made their way back to the Ravenclaw common room. Despite the challenges, their spirits remained high, driven by the dream of clinching the Quidditch Cup. Initially confused as to why Ethan was chasing a ball on a broomstick, believing herself to be far more interesting than any broomstick, she soon became an avid fan of Ethan, watching his training sessions from start to finish with great interest. The training sessions on rainy days were particularly challenging, with rain, mud, and sweat mixing together, leaving everyone looking wet and dirty. However, Ethan didn't mind this. He found it refreshing to stretch his body through Quidditch occasionally. After cleaning up, he emerged refreshed to find the common room buzzing with activity. "What happened?" Ethan asked, catching Zhang Chu, who was enthusiastically sharing the news. The girl, with a crooked smile, excitedly explained, "Soon we'll be able to spend the weekend in Hogsmeade. I look forward to this day every semester." "Are you going somewhere interesting?" Iwu piped up, excited at the prospect. "Okay, take me with you, take me with you." "Of course I'll take Iwu there," Ethan reassured, patting Xiaolong's head before turning to Zhang Chu. "When exactly is it?" The girl pointed to the text on the newly installed bulletin board. "The end of October. Hello, Ween Eve," she said, then looked at Ethan expectantly. "Should we go shopping together then? Just the two of us? Maybe take Iwu, and we can go to Honeyduke's and buy lots of chocolate." Hearing this proposal, Ethan felt a bit embarrassed. "Well, I'm happy to agree, but it seems that a lot of friends need my company. So—" "Oh, that's how it is," Zhang Chu said, her excitement fading to disappointment. This made Ethan feel guilty. He wasn't the type to take others' feelings for granted. After a moment of thought, he said, "However, if I can squeeze out some time, it's not impossible to go shopping alone for a while." "Then it's a deal." The girls' excitement returned, and they clapped hands in agreement. "Well, it's a deal." The anticipation for the Hogsmeade visit wasn't limited to Ethan and his friends. It was a significant event, especially for the third-year wizards experiencing it for the first time. Ravenclaw students had already sent permission forms home to get their parents' signatures. For those like Ethan and Cyrilla who didn't have parents to sign for them, Professor Flitwick took responsibility, having already prepared the necessary permissions. However, an unexpected incident occurred the night before the Hogsmeade visit. After dinner, as everyone returned to their common rooms, Ethan was preparing to rest when he suddenly heard Professor Flitwick's voice echoing through the common room. They quickly put on their pajamas and rushed to the lounge to gather. Professor Flitwick didn't explain the reason, but led everyone directly to the auditorium. Upon arrival, they found Gryffindor and Hufflepuff students already there, with their common rooms being closer, and Slytherin arriving last. Despite everyone's confusion, it became apparent something was amiss when they noticed Dementors flying around Hogwarts again. Professor Dumbledore then addressed the students. "Hogwarts has been invaded. The faculty and I will conduct a thorough search of the castle. For your own safety, you may have to spend the night here." He instructed the prefects to guard the auditorium entrance and the heads of the boys' and girls' unions to stay in the hall and report anything immediately. Before leaving, Professor Dumbledore added, "Oh, by the way, you will need." With a wave of his wand, the long tables flew to the edge of the auditorium, setting the stage for their unexpected overnight stay. Against the wall, with another wave of his wand, the ground was covered with hundreds of purple sleeping bags. "Sleep well," Professor Dumbledore said, closing the door as he exited. The auditorium immediately filled with excited, buzzing voices. The Gryffindor students were busy recounting the recent events to their peers. Ethan understood what was happening. Apparently, Sirius Black had invaded the Hogwarts gates early. Chapter 194. At this time, all the candles in the auditorium had been extinguished, and the enchanted ceiling mirrored the sky outside, sprinkled with numerous stars. Beneath this celestial display, only the silver ghosts emitted a faint glow. In this critical moment, they shed their usual unreliable demeanor and diligently performed their duties. Utilizing their ability to pass through walls, they scoured every hidden nook for traces of Blake, floating around while engaging in serious discussions with professors and prefects, evidently exchanging information. For Ethan, sleeping in a group was an entirely novel experience. He lay there, gazing up at the ceiling that resembled an outcrop and listening to the residual whispers in the auditorium, feeling as though he was camping outdoors. "Do you think Black is still in the castle?" Hermione whispered from Ethan's left. The Ravenclaw and Gryffindor beds were adjacent, and Hermione had deliberately chosen the bunk closest to Ethan. "Probably not. I don't think anyone would be foolish enough to linger at a crime scene, especially with Dumbledore around," Ethan replied. 297, Zhang Chu casually remarked from Ethan's other side, clearly thinking the professors were overreacting. "Then how did he sneak in?" Cyrilla's voice floated down from above after a moment, puzzled by the presence of so many Dementors guarding the school's entrance. "It must be apparition," Harry suggested, only to be met with Hermione's scorn. If you had read Hogwarts: A History, you'd know that apparition is impossible within Hogwarts, she retorted, causing Harry's face to flush with embarrassment. He had forgotten that detail. Maybe a secret passage? George and Fred mentioned that Hogwarts is full of them, Ron chimed in, inadvertently outing his twin brothers. Or perhaps he flew in? Maybe he has a little dragon that flew him into the castle. Iwu offered his theory, despite his lack of knowledge. Oh no, Iwu, Black couldn't have a dragonette. In fact, I'm the only one with a little dragon capable of flying me into the castle. Iwu is unique, Ethan clarified, petting Iwu's head. Really? Is Iwu truly unique? Iwu perked up, thrilled by the praise. Can the unique Iwu have one more biscuit? But it's bedtime. Well, just one piece. Ethan conceded to Iwu's pleading and gave him another small piece of cookie. He then noticed the girls around him staring. What are you looking at? Fine, I've convinced you, but why are you all acting as childish as Iwu? Aren't you worried about getting fat from eating this late? Ethan muttered, reluctantly sharing a few cookies with the girls around him. Lee, Ron, and several nearby young wizards also benefited from his generosity. The bed chat had evolved into a veritable tea party, with everyone speculating about possible methods of sneaking into Hogwarts. Suggestions ranged from disguises to polyjuice potion, with varied opinions. Everyone, it's bedtime! Percy's authoritative voice echoed nearby. I want all of you in your sleeping bags and no more talking. Look, the majesty of the male leader, George quipped sarcastically, referring to Percy's role as head boy. Compared to head boy, I think humongous big head suits him better, Fred added with a hint of envy, eliciting a wave of snickers. Seizing the moment, Ethan patted Iwu, who excitedly turned invisible and bounded over to Percy Weasley in the distance. Using the dragon as a conduit, Ethan discreetly cast a spell. When Percy resumed his patrol, the twins were astonished to see the head boy badge on Percy's chest had indeed transformed into a humongous big head badge. Their laughter erupted throughout the auditorium. What's going on? Who's laughing? Percy attempted to restore order, but as more young wizards noticed the Percy Big Head badge, the laughter only grew. From a duet to a symphony, the order in the room was completely lost. Under the quilt, Ethan's pet dragon, Iwu, was thrilled about the successful prank, swinging its tail and whispering, "This is Iwu's prank. Iwu is the most powerful little dragon." At that moment, the door of the auditorium opened, and Professor Flitwick entered with two pale boys, Steve Cornford and Kevin Entwistle, Ethan's roommates. Concerned, Ethan asked, "What happened to them?" Noticing Ethan, Flitwick explained, "They were in the library earlier and missed the notice. They returned a bit late, only to encounter a ghost monster searching the corridor." It was noted that not all paths to the first-floor auditorium were indoors, some were outdoor routes. The boys' faces were marked by numbness and despair, clearly having had much of their happiness drained away. Ethan handed over 2 cookies. Ever since he started caring for Iwu, he always kept a stash of these treats in his pocket. Flitwick directed the boys to find bunks to rest in, then hurriedly went to fetch Madame Pomfrey. Despite eating the biscuits, Steve and Kevin still looked despondent. Ethan had an idea. If anyone could instantly uplift spirits, who better than the carnival dragon? Turning to Iwu, who was curiously watching the boys, Ethan said, "I need you to play a role and use your power to make them happy, okay?" "Is it time for Iwu to sing?" "Iwu loves singing the most," the little dragon responded eagerly. Then, Iwu's clear and melodious humming filled the auditorium, echoing a tune reminiscent of Lenaro's Dream, a melody from a world not unlike Elysium. As Iwu sang, the carnival dragon's power of joy was unleashed. Steve and Kevin felt an uncontrollable happiness surge through their numb hearts, as if the joyful days of the past were right before their eyes. The Dementor's influence was suppressed, and their expressions visibly brightened. Indeed, the carnival dragon's power was the perfect counter to the Dementors. When Madame Pomfrey arrived with Professor Flitwick, she found Steve and Kevin laughing heartily with their peers. Learning that Iwu was behind their recovery, they were overjoyed. Madame Pomfrey, touched, praised Iwu for being so capable and heroic. "Fantastic! Iwu is the most capable little dragon, just like a real hero, because we are the real heroes," she exclaimed, dancing joyfully. However, Iwu's magical tunes had a price. Not only Steve and Kevin, but other young wizards in the auditorium were also affected by the excitement. It took a group effort and most of the night before they could finally settle down to sleep. Thus, this special night passed, but the repercussions of the ghost monster's attack were just beginning. Iwu's profile. Name: Iwu. Race: Carnival Dragon, Adult Dragon, originally a young dragon. Level: LV16, LV4 Carnival Dragon. Strength: 27. Agility: 14, 10. Constitution: 21, 13. Intelligence: 20, 14. Perception: 19, 14. Charisma: 22, 15. Abilities: Advanced Magic Resistance, Shapeshifting, Lightning Reflex, Chaotic Breath, Sonic Breath, Performer, Feast of Joy, Protection Sound, Dragon Power, Plane Assimilation. Familiar abilities: Spell Transfer, Lifelink, Sense Sharing, Spell Sharing, Ability Sharing. Spells equivalent to LV7 Spellcaster, Charm Casting. Level 0, Mage's Hand, Water Creation, Light, Detect Magic, Increase Resistance, Switch. First level, Detect Evil, Divine Favor, Entropic Shield, Grease, Hidden Mist, Wild Power. Spell levels and their functions. Level 2 spells cure moderate wounds. This spell accelerates healing, significantly reducing the recovery time for moderate injuries. Assistance. Enhances the recipient's ability to perform tasks, providing a temporary boost in skill or strength. Sound Explosion. Creates a powerful burst of sound that can disorient or damage opponents within a certain radius. Stable Injury. Constant. This spell maintains a steady state for injuries, preventing them from worsening over time. Level 3 spells. Dispel Magic. This spell can nullify other magical effects, making it invaluable in combat against spellcasters. Remove Curse. Specifically designed to eliminate curses, this spell can reverse even the most potent of hexes. Wind Wall generates a barrier of turbulent wind capable of deflecting arrows, small creatures, and gases. Stone Shaping allows the caster to mold and shape stone as if it were clay, useful in both construction and combat. Charm Monsters. This spell can bend monsters to the caster's will, making them temporary allies. Free Movement grants immunity to spells and effects that impede movement, ensuring the caster's mobility. Tongues enables the caster to understand and speak any language, facilitating communication with any creature. Any Door creates a magical portal that can transport the caster and their companions to a location they have previously visited. These spells, categorized by their level of complexity and power, offer a wide range of capabilities, from healing and protection to manipulation and transportation. Each spell serves a unique purpose, providing the caster with the tools necessary to navigate the challenges of a magical world. Chapter 195. Black's Invasion. The invasion by Sirius Black had indeed plunged Hogwarts into a state of turmoil, further exacerbated by the troubles caused by the Dementors. If not for the timely intervention of Ethan, it's likely that the Ministry of Magic and Dumbledore would have been inundated with even more complaints. In the days that followed, the professors decided against having students sleep in the auditorium. Instead, they tasked the prefects with enforcing stricter rules and tighter control over the students. No one was allowed to enter or leave the castle without explicit permission, and prefects escorted students to their classes. In Gryffindor, the fat lady's vandalized portrait was replaced by one of Sir Cadogan and his plump gray pony. This change was met with dismay by the Gryffindors, as Sir Cadogan was notorious for challenging people to duels and setting absurdly complex passwords, changing them at least twice a day. Neville Longbottom suffered the most from this arrangement, struggling to keep up with the ever-changing passwords. Despite these tensions, the anticipation for the next Hogsmeade trip, which had been postponed rather than cancelled, offered some relief to the students. Conversations among the young wizards were dominated by two topics: Ethan's singing and the mystery of how Sirius Black had managed to infiltrate the castle. For at least a week, Ethan refrained from taking the little dragon out of the Ravenclaw common room, as every appearance in the corridor led to requests for him to sing. The speculation about Sirius Black's entry into the castle grew increasingly wild, with one student even suggesting that Black could transform into a flowering bush. Yet, no one suspected the truth, that Sirius was an unregistered animagus. Professor Remus Lupin was aware of this fact, but had yet to disclose it. The most sinister theory came from Professor Snape, who insinuated that the breach was made possible by a mole within Hogwarts, hinting at Lupin as the culprit. Dumbledore, however, refused to entertain baseless suspicions against his staff, much to Snape's chagrin. This frustration carried over into Snape's demeanor when he unexpectedly appeared to teach defense against the dark arts, substituting for an ill Professor Lupin. The Ravenclaws were taken aback, while the Slytherins seemed pleased by the switch. Professor Lupin was too ill to attend today, so he asked me to take over, Snape announced with a smug grin. He left no record of what you've been studying, so who can enlighten me? As Snape's gaze swept over them, all eyes turned to Ethan, who reluctantly raised his hand. Mr. Snape, we've covered boggarts, redcaps, kappas, and grindylows. We were about to progress to creatures with higher Ministry of Magic classifications, Ethan explained calmly, aware that Professor Lupin was the first defense against the dark arts teacher who had genuinely taught them anything substantial. Snape, however, was unimpressed. It seems you're easily satisfied with mediocrity. Lupin has set the bar quite low. I believe even first-year students could handle a redcap or grindylow. Today we'll discuss something more challenging, he declared, flipping through the textbook to the last chapter. Werewolves, he announced, instructing the class to turn to page 394, his eyes glinting as he observed their shocked expressions. Again, all of you. Now! Although the reason behind Professor Snape's actions was unclear, many speculated it was due to his personal animosity towards Professor Lupin. Faced with the formidable Professor Snape, the students had no choice but to comply. Can any of you tell me how to distinguish a werewolf from a real wolf? The classroom fell silent after his question. The students quietly took notes on werewolves from their textbooks while Snape patrolled the room, scrutinizing the work they had done under Professor Lupin's instruction. When the bell finally rang, Snape didn't dismiss them. Each of you is to write an essay on how to identify and kill werewolves. This assignment should cover 2 pieces of parchment and is due Monday morning. Someone should take responsibility for this class. After the tedious Defense Against the Dark Arts class, the students faced an even more lackluster Halloween Eve. In previous years, Hogwarts would have been adorned with festive decorations and filled with joy. However, the intrusion by Black and the disturbances caused by the Dementors had dampened everyone's spirits, making this semester's Halloween party the dullest yet. The absence of decorations, performances, and only Dumbledore's stern safety speech left much to be desired. Only the exquisite food offered some consolation to the disheartened students. Upon returning to the common room, Ethan noticed the pervasive sense of unease. The threat posed by Black's invasion and the Dementors had already unsettled everyone. Professor Lupin's unexpected leave of absence only added to the students' distress. Professor Lupin repelled the Dementors on the train, and I really wanted to ask him about the Patronus charm, Kevin expressed his concern. I doubt Professor Snape would ever teach us that, Steve chimed in, sharing the sentiment that Snape was merely looking for reasons to criticize Professor Lupin. But Professor Lupin wasn't the only one who drove the Dementors away from the train. Zhang Chu reminded them. Ethan was also involved, along with our senior sisters Cirilla and Penelo. You could ask them for advice. Steve's eyes brightened at the suggestion. Ethan, we're all counting on you, he said, turning to the boy beside him. What are you suggesting? Ethan asked, puzzled. Steve spoke up, his voice carrying across the common room and drawing the attention of many. With the Dementors now on campus, aiming to capture Black and endangering innocents like us, it's crucial we find another way to learn the Patronus charm. Ethan, you're the best person to teach us. Steve is right, Kevin added. Think about it, everyone. Last semester, we all attended Ethan's Defense Against the Dark Arts classes. Even though he's our peer, his teaching was on par with the professor's. The room filled with voices of agreement. Ethan, please teach us, they pleaded. Faced with the looming threat of the Dementors, the students' pleas grew more urgent. Please, help us. We want to take your class like last semester. As Ethan considered their request, the urgency of the situation was clear. The students were desperate for guidance, and with the Dementors casting a shadow over the school, learning the Patronus charm had never felt more necessary. Chapter 196. Regarding the little wizard's request, Ethan pondered for a moment before nodding in agreement. I covered the defense against the dark arts class last semester, but it seems we're still missing 1 or 2 classes, aren't we? More importantly, the current sources of anxiety for the young wizards at Hogwarts are Sirius Black and the Dementors. Whoever can alleviate this anxiety will undoubtedly gain a significant amount of goodwill and favor. Given the circumstances, the study group we're establishing is likely to evolve into a small community. For instance, the group Voldemort formed during his school days, as Riddle eventually became the Death Eaters. Similarly, Dumbledore's army, which Harry will form in the future, shows potential to become a miniature Order of the Phoenix. Of course, our current situation is much more favorable than that of Dumbledore's army. At least we don't have to conceal our activities or worry about finding a venue. Since you all wish to learn the Patronus charm, I will speak with Professor Flitwick about securing an empty classroom for us to practice the spell, Ethan announced. His statement was met with enthusiastic cheers from the Ravenclaws, nearly lifting the roof off the lounge. The following morning, Ethan approached Professor Flitwick. After hearing Ethan's proposal, Professor Flitwick, as the head of Ravenclaw, expressed his full support, delighted to see such enthusiasm among his students. I will discuss your study group with Dumbledore. In the meantime, feel free to use the charms classroom as you need, he said. Though not the headmaster, Professor Flitwick had the authority to allocate his classroom as he saw fit. On behalf of my classmates, thank you, Professor, Ethan said, extending an invitation. If you're available, we would be honored to have you join our study group for guidance. Of course, I'd be delighted to attend, Professor Flitwick replied, clearly pleased with his protégé's initiative. At lunch that day, Ethan noticed the eager gazes of the younger Ravenclaw wizards. What did Professor Flitwick say, Ethan? Steve asked impatiently. The entire Ravenclaw table fell silent, with students from all years waiting anxiously for his response. Ethan confirmed that they would be starting a group to learn the Patronus charm, and the news was met with cheers that echoed throughout the Great Hall, drawing curious looks from the other houses. After lunch, Ethan sought out Penelo and Cyrilla, both 7th-year students who usually stuck together. Cyrilla and Penelo, I need your assistance with the study group, Ethan said directly. Of course, just say the word, Cyrilla responded without hesitation. Penelo, however, teased him. Why so formal, calling me Senior Penelo? I can't help you if you're going to be like that. Faced with Penelo's playful reproach, Ethan could only offer a wry smile. All right, Penelo, as the president of our student union and with your extensive organizational experience, I need your help in managing the participants. It's an honor to help establish the most popular Patronus charm study group, Penelo said, no longer resisting the idea. And you, Cyrilla, I hope you can serve as a demonstration assistant in our sessions, Ethan said, turning to the witch. Cyrilla nodded, accepting the role. Great, Ethan said, clapping his hands together. With that settled, we can start organizing some of the more important tasks. Our group currently lacks a practical teaching aid for spell practice. Eventually, I might capture a Dementor for advanced training, but for now, we need something more basic. A boggart would be perfect. I recall Professor Lupin's hasn't been dealt with yet. We'll need someone to go find him and borrow the boggart, Ethan said, indicating they had a task at hand. Penelo was taken aback. So we've just taken office and already have a job to do? She asked. Cyrilla, unfazed, simply looked at her friend. Should you go, or should I? I'd better go, Penelo decided, seeing Ethan's determination. As the head girl, I interact with professors more often. It might be easier for me to convince him. She felt overwhelmed by Ethan and Cyrilla's assertive nature. That afternoon, when Ethan's leadership qualities began to emerge, Penelo approached Professor Lupin. Despite not understanding why the professor seemed so frail, she successfully borrowed the boggart. Professor Lupin was known for his approachability. With the classroom and teaching aids ready, Ethan announced the details of that night's training before dinner. Penelo's role as head girl became even more crucial during this emergency period. She had the authority to supervise the students' classes and ensure they returned to their dormitories on time. However, her presence also meant that Ethan's study group could continue their sessions late into the night without interruption. During dinner, the Ravenclaw students eagerly discussed the upcoming training session. Afterward, nearly half of the Ravenclaw house gathered in the Charms classroom, which had been prepared as a training ground. At the back of the room stood an old wooden cabinet, housing the boggart, which seemed to sense the excitement outside and began to stir. Penelope Clivet, not Ethan, was the first to step forward. As head girl, she commanded the room's attention, using a charm to amplify her voice. "Everyone, please focus here," she announced, instantly quieting the chatter. "I'm Penelope Clivet, your head girl. It's wonderful to see so many of us here tonight. Firstly, I want to remind everyone why we've established this study group. Due to Sirius Black's escape, the Ministry of Magic has stationed Dementors around the school for our protection," she explained. "However, these creatures have already harmed several students. The Ministry clearly cannot control them effectively." Penelo criticized the Ministry's incompetence, drawing the students' attention to Steve and Kevin, who had been attacked by Dementors. Their experiences underscored the importance of the study group. In light of these events, and with Professor Flitwick's approval, we've decided to hold a training session every Saturday night to learn the Patronus charm, Penelo continued, addressing the students' concerns. Her speech was met with enthusiastic applause, even from Luna, who usually remained indifferent. As the applause died down, Penelo added, "Fortunately, we have a talented student among us, Ethan Green. Despite being only in his 3rd year, he has more experience fighting magical creatures than anyone else. Ethan Green is the first wizard in history to kill a chimera and survive. Last semester, he vanquished a basilisk alongside 2 companions, and during the summer vacation, he was part of the Ministry of Magic's dragon-slaying operation, led by Zhao Ji. Ethan has also proven adept at dealing with Dementors. On the Hogwarts Express, he guided us in successfully fending off dozens of hungry Dementors. As his classmates, we are honored to invite him to be our teacher." The applause that followed was even more fervent than before, signaling the audience's overwhelming support. It was then time to discuss the logistics of the study group. The study group operates on a voluntary basis. All young wizards currently participating have chosen to do so of their own free will, and we may welcome new members in the future after a review process. However, everyone is free to leave at any time, the speaker explained. During the study group sessions, we might encounter some dangerous situations. Additionally, to meet our educational goals, the study group will assign specific tasks as needed and implement a system of rewards and punishments. Ethan Green, as the group's leader, reserves the right to make decisions regarding these arrangements, including the expulsion of members. Conversely, all group members retain the right to withdraw freely. If you are willing to adhere to these principles, please raise your hands. With your agreement, this study group will be officially established. As soon as the speaker concluded, every hand in the audience was raised without hesitation, including those of the 7th-year wizards about to graduate. Ethan's long-standing reputation and his string of achievements have earned him the unwavering respect and trust of everyone present. Chapter 197. After Penelo finished speaking ill of him, it was finally Ethan's turn to take the stage. "Thank you for your favor and for choosing me to be the teacher of the study group. This is a great honor for me," Ethan began, his humility immediately winning him a round of applause. "Since everyone trusts me so much, I will naturally not disappoint your expectations. In the study group, I will do my best to teach everyone the spells to deal with Dementors, or any other knowledge you might need," Ethan continued. "In short, I hope everyone can gain something from the study group, and that Dementors will no longer be a threat to us." His words were met with another burst of applause and cheers. What Ethan said was exactly what they wanted to achieve. When the applause subsided, Ethan added, "Of course, a single tree cannot make a forest. I can't maintain a study group alone. That's why I want to introduce you to my assistants. First up is our head girl, Miss Penelope Clivet. I am honored that she took time out of her busy study and work schedule to help me set up this study group. She has provided invaluable assistance during the process of setting up the group," Ethan said. In the following study sessions, she will be responsible for the organizational tasks of the group, such as signing in, issuing notices, and organizing activities. If anyone needs time off or wishes to join or leave the study group, please see her. As Ethan spoke, Penelo stood to his left, her demeanor serious yet approachable, embodying a leadership style that was neither aggressive nor passive. Secondly, I would like to introduce my most important teaching assistant, Miss Cyrilla Ray Allen. Everyone knows that Cyrilla and I are the best partners on the Quidditch field, but what you may not know is that she is also my most trusted comrade in battling magical creatures. She has always been by my side, Ethan shared. Therefore, in terms of magical proficiency, you can trust her as much as you trust me. In future courses, she will not only serve as my demonstration assistant, but will also help guide everyone's specific spellcasting techniques. Cyrilla walked onto the stage from the crowd and stood to Ethan's right, her appearance triggering a burst of cheers. As a Ravenclaw Quidditch star and recognized as the most beautiful girl, she was immensely popular. The third assistant may be a bit unusual, but I dare say most of you will appreciate her. She is my most important magical pet, Iwu. As soon as Ethan finished speaking, Iwu couldn't wait to rush from behind to Ethan's shoulders, spreading her beautiful wings in a showy manner. In our future studies, Iwu will contribute in the medical field. After all, the original purpose of establishing our study group was to combat Dementors. To quickly master the Patronus charm, we'll need to use some special teaching aids, and during this process, some may inevitably be affected by Dementors. At that time, Iwu's healing abilities, which you must have witnessed the night before last, will be indispensable. The audience responded with roaring applause once again. In Ravenclaw, almost everyone had grown to appreciate Iwu, especially after her successful rescue of Steve and Kevin. With that, Ethan had finished introducing the core structure of the study group. Among them, Penelo held the most crucial position. It seemed that Ethan had entrusted her with the most significant responsibilities of the group. Could it be that the life and death power of the entire study group was in her hands? Of course, there's a saying, in Ethan's view, managing personnel is the task most likely to offend people. In this case, if Ethan were to handle this work personally, it might diminish his own prestige. It was better to delegate these tasks to others and be a visionary leader. As for Penelo, she might use this power to sideline Ethan, or at least influence his decisions. In essence, the study group was founded on two pillars, the young wizard's fear of Dementors and Ethan's own prestige. Therefore, without Ethan's presence, the study group would likely disband immediately. In this light, Ethan realized it was more prudent to delegate important tasks and position himself as a manager or mentor. He announced, "Given our limited study time and the fact that we have only one teaching aide, our training sessions are incredibly valuable. I hope every student will appreciate this opportunity. Consequently, we will cap our enrollment until we can secure more resources and equipment. For now, we will not accept new members from other houses," Ethan explained. This announcement visibly shifted the mood among the young wizards. Ethan's strategy of creating an us versus them dynamic instilled a strong sense of pride and exclusivity. "You're right, Ethan. We won't let them in. We have Ethan. Let them be envious." Suddenly, the study group felt more like an exclusive club, with Ethan as its charismatic leader. However, almost no one, except Penelo, seemed to grasp Ethan's underlying intentions. Penelo's surprised reaction and complex gaze did not escape Ethan's notice. After rallying the group, Ethan and his assistants began the lecture. "Before we start practicing, it's important, especially for the younger students, to understand Dementors and the Patronus charm," Ethan said, adopting the tone of a seasoned professor. "Can anyone tell me about Dementors?" Zhang Chu was the first to volunteer, eager to support Ethan's initiative. Ethan acknowledged her, and she stood up to explain. "Dementors are dark creatures, considered the most repulsive beings in existence. They drain all positive emotions and happy memories, leaving one in despair and hopelessness." "Well said, Zhang Chu," Ethan commended, adding humorously, "But I'm sorry, just like last semester, I still can't award extra points." The room filled with laughter, and Zhang Chu returned to her seat, pleased. "However, as a personal token of appreciation, I'll give you a homemade cookie after class." Everyone seems to enjoy them. Does anyone else have something to add? To everyone's surprise, Luna, often reserved in professors' classes, raised her hand. After Ethan's nod, she elaborated. Beyond stealing positive emotions, Dementors possess a more malevolent power. The Dementor's kiss, which extracts a person's soul, leaving them an empty shell, devoid of consciousness and beyond recovery, a fate worse than death. Thank you, Miss Lovegood, for that detailed explanation, Ethan said with a smile, appreciating her contribution. Now that we understand the threat Dementors pose, let's discuss the spells that can repel them. Chapter 198, The Principles of the Patronus Charm. Ethan began to explain the principles of the Patronus Charm. As Zhang Chu and Luna mentioned earlier, Dementors embody negative emotions and power, draining happiness and bringing despair to people. To counter this negative force, we need to harness positive emotions. This is where the power of the Patronus Charm originates. In essence, a Patronus is a manifestation of positive and happy emotional energy, representing hope, happiness, and the desire to survive. Unlike a real person, it does not feel despair, making it impervious to Dementors. Therefore, before casting the Patronus Charm, it's crucial to focus on recalling the happiest memory you can think of. The more joy the memory brings, the more effective the spell will be. Use your wand to draw a circle, gathering power for the spell. Then recite the incantation, calling God to protect. The Patronus will emerge from the wand's tip and charge towards the target. Ethan then demonstrated the Patronus Charm. Let's give it a try. Calling God to protect. At that moment, silver light streamed from his wand's tip, coalescing into a complete image. A dragon, an adult carnival dragon, identical to Iwu in its adult form. Look, do you see it? That dragon looks just like me, Iwu exclaimed excitedly upon seeing the carnival dragon formed by the white light. Ethan felt that he could change the Patronus back into the image of a feathered serpent with a mere thought, but its initial form remained a carnival dragon, seemingly fixed by the bond between him and the dragon. Without altering it, Ethan controlled the carnival dragon Patronus to circle the classroom, eliciting gasps of amazement. As the Patronus neared, everyone felt a surge of warmth and joy. Eventually, the Patronus approached Iwu, giving the little dragon a kiss on the forehead before vanishing. This demonstrates the full effect of the Patronus Charm, Ethan explained. However, I don't expect everyone to achieve this in their first class. The Patronus Charm is advanced magic, well beyond the capabilities of ordinary wizards. Many skilled wizards struggle to master the Patronus Charm, so don't be discouraged if you don't succeed immediately. The students, especially the eager Ravenclaws, listened intently, their eyes shining with determination. Ethan continued, As I mentioned, think about your happiest memories before practicing. Since we're not facing Dementors right now, we have plenty of time. As a level 7 psychic, Ethan found it relatively easy to access his happiest memories, a task that proved more challenging for the students. Nevertheless, they were keen to try. Are you all focusing on happy memories? Then repeat after me, calling God to protect. The students attempted the incantation, and some noticed a wisp of silver mist ejecting from their wands. Well done, that's a start, Ethan praised, stepping down from the podium to encourage the student who had managed to produce the silver mist. This is the initial success of the Patronus Charm. Ethan's confirmation ignited a wave of excitement among the young wizards. Very well, Ethan said with a smile. Then let's try it with a Dementor. Although it's not real, the shapeless Patronus Charm should suffice. Now, let's start with some free practice. If you have any questions, feel free to ask the teaching assistant. Those who feel ready can line up for practical exercises. Please maintain order. Sorella immediately stood up to fulfill her duties, with Penelo rising to assist her. Ethan walked over to the closet, noticing a line of eager young wizards in front of him. Most were senior students, but to Ethan's surprise, Luna was among them, sparking whispers among the others. Isn't that the odd girl? She's overestimating her abilities. She's only in her second year. Not all wizards are named Ravengrim. Despite Ethan's previous efforts to educate them, some students still harbored disdain for Luna, though they no longer dared to bully her openly. Ethan, understanding, the complexity of changing deeply ingrained attitudes, simply offered Luna an encouraging smile before turning his wand towards the cabinet. As the door quietly opened, revealing an old TV, the image of Sadako crawling out sent a shiver through the room. Ethan quickly cast Thought Invisibility, concealing his thoughts and missing the Dementor's appearance. The boggart, deceived, transformed into a Dementor with a bang, its hooded face and decaying hand reaching out from under its cloak. The classroom lights flickered and died until Ethan's daylight technique restored the light. The boggart Dementor, under the influence of Ethan's command technique, turned its attention to the young wizards. Its illusionary form, capable of turning the imaginary into reality, instilled fear in them. Several senior wizards faltered, unable to recall a single happy memory to conjure even a wisp of silver mist. They resignedly accepted chocolate for comfort and awaited spiritual healing from Iwu. Then, a seventh-year wizard, overwhelmed by fear, dropped his wand and left the queue in defeat. It was Luna's turn. Facing the Dementor, her usual dreamy expression turned serious, her hand trembling as she held her wand. As the Dementor floated towards her, Luna recited her spell with increasing urgency. Call upon the gods to protect me. Her first attempt failed. Call upon the gods to protect me. Call upon God. The Dementor drew closer, but Luna stood her ground, her disheveled light blonde hair obscuring her face. Just as Ethan was about to intervene, a burst of silver-white gas erupted from Luna's wand, brighter than any before it. The gas forced the Dementor back, its anger palpable as it lunged at Luna, only to obediently return to the closet like a puppet, ready for the next challenger. Ethan quickly stepped forward and supported Luna with his hands to prevent her from losing strength and falling. Upon contact, he discovered that Luna's robe was soaked with cold sweat. As the young witch who had the closest contact with Dementors, she could no longer practice. So, Ethan supported Luna and brought her to the corner where Iwu was. As Iwu's ditty played, Luna gradually returned to her usual appearance, at least on the surface. Ethan didn't notice that while he was taking care of Luna, Cirilla, Zhangqiu, and Penelo all looked at him with meaningful eyes. Well, maybe we should stop here for the night, Ethan announced, returning to the podium. This spell is still a bit too difficult. Even with Iwu here, I shouldn't have let you face the Dementors directly now, Ethan said with some self-blame. At least you should wait until you can successfully cast the complete Patronus before starting actual combat training. It's okay, Ethan. I was just shocked. Don't worry about it. The Dementors won't give us time to prepare, will they? I still feel that actual practice can help me improve more. Am I the only one who thinks the female ghost named Sadako is scarier than the Dementors? The young wizards all spoke to comfort Ethan, but Ethan still insisted on closing the closet. In a blink of an eye, the class time was coming to an end. Ethan clapped his hands and asked everyone to return to their seats. Tonight's training was very successful. I found that most of you were able to summon the prototype of your Patronus. This is all the result of hard work. Thank you for your hard work. In order to reward everyone for their efforts, I contacted the house elf door in the kitchen in advance and prepared some surprises for everyone, a sumptuous late-night snack. As he spoke, he waved his magic wand, and all the desks rose into the air to form several rows of long tables in the classroom. The young wizards were automatically pushed to the long tables by their chairs. The tables were filled with mountains of cakes, pudding, chocolate frogs, and other sweets, as well as bottles of ice-cold juice and pumpkin juice. The young wizards cheered and jumped at the sweets. Iwu directly occupied a plate, and the fear from before was instantly forgotten. After the meal, the Ravenclaws lined up and happily returned to the lounge under the leadership of Penelo. This group study was great. I feel like I learned a lot. Ethan actually provides late-night snacks. I will never miss this kind of study group. Hope next weekend comes soon. The young wizards had gained a lot, were in high spirits, and were full of expectations for the next training. Chapter 199, The Patronus Study Group. The news that Ethan Green started a study group to teach the Patronus charm within Ravenclaw quickly spread throughout the academy. Young wizards from other houses expressed their envy, and many inquired if the study group was open to students outside Ravenclaw. In a quiet corner of the library, Harry Potter approached Ethan with a sense of secrecy. Ethan, I heard that you Ravenclaws are learning the Patronus charm together. Is that right? After some initial hesitation, Harry got straight to the point. Ethan immediately grasped Harry's interest in learning the charm, likely spurred by Malfoy's boasting and his own encounter with the Dementors on the train. Before Harry could elaborate, Ethan interjected. Yes, but due to limited resources, the study group is currently exclusive to Ravenclaw students. The space and resources are provided by our house, after all. However, you could be invited to participate if Professor Flitwick's application for additional support is approved by Principal Dumbledore. I'll let you know if that happens. Ethan hoped his explanation didn't come across as too blunt, aiming to manage Harry's expectations. That would be amazing. It's a shame Gryffindor doesn't have something similar. I haven't heard of any Gryffindor seniors who know the charm, Harry remarked, his tone reflecting his disappointment. He then shifted the conversation to the upcoming trip to Hogsmeade, lamenting his inability to get permission due to his aunt and uncle's lack of support, and Professor McGonagall's reservations. Considering the high Dementor presence outside the school, Harry was exploring ways to visit Hogsmeade undetected. Ethan, who had observed Harry's growing penchant for seeking out solutions to magical dilemmas, often from Hermione and, when she couldn't assist, from him, couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility towards his friend. That's not a problem. On the day of the trip, just go to the Weasley twins and tell them I sent you. They'll help you out, Ethan assured him. Thank you, Ethan. Harry's face brightened with relief. As he was about to leave, Ethan called out to him, suggesting a more suitable mentor for learning the Patronus charm. Actually, Harry, if you're serious about learning the charm, Professor Remus Lupin would be the best person to ask. He was one of those who drove the Dementors away from the train. Harry, skeptical of the suggestion due to his reluctance to involve professors in his problems, nodded noncommittally and left. Ethan, understanding Harry's mindset, shook his head and returned to his book, confident that Harry would eventually seek out Professor Lupin's guidance. As the day of the Hogsmeade trip arrived, Ethan noticed an unusual buzz of excitement among the students at breakfast, everyone eager for the day ahead. The Wizarding Tavern was busier than usual, filled with travelers donned in attire suited for journeying. Amidst their meals, conversations buzzed with excitement about the day's travel plans. Senior students regaled the juniors with tales of Hogsmeade, eliciting gasps and envious glances. Ethan found his seat and was soon greeted by Cyrilla's voice. Ethan, sorry to keep you waiting. Oh, I've only just started, he replied, turning to face her. Despite their years of close companionship, Ethan's gaze made Cyrilla blush, a rare sight. She shyly tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, revealing a delicate silver earring on her dainty earlobe. At first glance, Cyrilla seemed her usual self, but Ethan noticed several subtle changes. Her eyebrows were neatly drawn, her eyes accentuated with makeup, and a hint of rouge adorned her lips. Her braids were meticulously styled, and she wore earrings he had never seen before. Her attire, though familiar, had been altered in small ways. The shoulders were cut wider, revealing her fair skin, and the neckline had dropped slightly. Cyrilla, usually so carefree, had dressed with special care today, leaving Ethan taken aback. Despite not opting for heavy makeup, the subtle changes rendered her less tomboyish and more softly alluring. Ethan didn't need any special senses to grasp the message behind her efforts. He leaned in and whispered, "Today's light makeup really suits you. It brings out your eyes. And the earrings are a perfect match. I like them a lot." Cyrilla didn't respond verbally, and her expression barely changed, but Ethan felt a wave of joy and acknowledgement from her. She moved closer to him, their moment of intimacy briefly interrupted by a teasing voice. Hey, what are you two whispering about? Leaving me out?" It was Penelo, Cyrilla's best friend, who playfully chided Ethan. "You should thank me. I recommended her outfit today. She didn't even know how to apply makeup before, but I taught her everything. She even picked out her clothes herself. Looks good, doesn't it?" Ethan silently applauded Penelo's efforts, despite her previous attempts to play matchmaker. "Shut up, Penelo!" Cyrilla snapped, embarrassed by the revelation of her behind-the-scenes efforts. Okay, I'll drop it," Penelo said with a smile, then turned to Ethan with a serious look. "Hey, Ethan Green, I know you're popular with the girls, but since you made an effort for Cirilla today, why not give her a day just for the two of you?" Before Ethan could reply, Cirilla's shy protest was cut off by Penello's teasing, but Ethan affirmed his intention. "Don't worry, I will." However, as Penello pointed out, Cirilla wasn't the only girl hoping to spend time with Ethan in Hogsmeade. Across the Ravenclaw table, Jiang Chu sent Ethan a suggestive wink, reminding him of a prior agreement. Ethan could only nod in response. On the Gryffindor side, Hermione rushed over to Ethan, her excitement palpable after finishing breakfast. Known for her dedication to her studies and a somewhat slower emotional response, Hermione, guided by her instincts, found herself wanting to limit Ethan's interactions with other female friends. This desire also fueled her wish to spend more time with him. Unlike in the original story, where her decision to stay at Hogwarts was solely to accompany Harry, who couldn't visit Hogsmeade, her motivations now included Ethan. Ethan realized that without proper planning for the day, he was likely to face an unprecedentedly difficult situation. He turned to the puzzled Iwu beside him and said, "It's up to you then." Iwu looked back at him, confused. Chapter 200. After breakfast, several students walked to the foyer, buzzing with excitement. "Students who wish to visit Hogsmeade Village, please gather here and follow this path." Professor McGonagall's voice cut through the air from outside, instantly organizing the previously chaotic crowd. They slowly exited Hogwarts Castle and formed a line in front of the massive cast-iron gate, where a lengthy queue had already formed. Before embarking on their trip to Hogsmeade, each student was required to present an application form signed by their parents, a measure to prevent unauthorized outings. Administrator Filch, positioned inside the gate, meticulously checked each form. His vigilant gaze swept over every student, ensuring no one without permission could slip through. Filch arrogantly snatched the forms from the students, scrutinizing them with his keen, vulture-like eyes before casting a challenging look back at the queue, seemingly delighting in making the process as difficult as possible. This caused a noticeable discomfort among the waiting students. "You're staying behind, Potter?" Ethan heard Draco Malfoy's sharp voice once again. Malfoy, flanked by his cronies Crabbe and Goyle, was mocking Harry from a short distance away. "Scared you'll faint at the sight of the Dementors again, are you?" Malfoy taunted, reenacting Harry's fainting incident with exaggerated flair, eliciting laughter from his Slytherin peers. Penello and Siri exchanged surprised glances upon noticing Ethan's lack of reaction. Even Hermione, who had stepped forward, was restrained by him. Malfoy, noticing Ethan in the queue, sneered reflexively. However, his smirk faded when he realized Ethan remained unprovoked. "Look, our savior has parted ways with Ethan Green. How pitiful, left with no friends and confined to the castle alone." Harry, ignoring Malfoy's jibes, ascended the marble stairs alone, disappearing around the corridor's corner. Hermione looked at Ethan, puzzled, while Ron continued to hurl insults at Malfoy. But Malfoy had already turned his attention to Ethan. "You've finally come to your senses, Ethan Green. You're not like them. Intelligent people like you should associate with those of status, ensuring a prosperous future." Malfoy preached, his chest puffed out in arrogance. Siri's hand moved towards the arcane sword in her bag, ready to draw it at any further provocation. Yet, Ethan appeared unfazed by Malfoy's words, which only inflated Malfoy's ego further. "Speechless, are you? Did my words strike a chord?" Ethan shook his head, a look of resignation on his face, and drew his wand. "You never think before you speak. I'm offering you a chance to correct yourself," he said, causing Malfoy to pale slightly but maintain his stance. "If I were you, I'd be wary of depending too much on the savior," Malfoy hinted, possibly alluding to Sirius. Ethan pondered Malfoy's words, surprised by the unexpected gesture of what seemed like kindness, albeit delivered in a condescending manner. Despite dismissing Malfoy's attempt at reconciliation, Ethan couldn't help but be curious about his motives. After all, following their last encounter, which had ended disastrously for Malfoy, it was unusual for someone of his age to seek favor with an adversary, especially in such a haughty manner. Ethan speculated that Lucius Malfoy, Draco's father, might be behind this unexpected overture. Considering the complex relationship between Lucius and Ethan, along with Lucius's cunning, Ethan wondered what Lucius's true intentions were. If that's the case, then he truly doesn't care about the fate of the Malfoy family. At that moment, Filch's urging voice echoed, "You guys, do you still want to go to Hogsmeade?" Malfoy cast a glance at Ethan, decided to stop arguing with Ron and the others, and left the room with Crabbe and Goyle in tow. The Malfoy family has long been adept at assessing situations, Luna remarked, having approached unnoticed. Ethan suddenly realized the truth and smiled bitterly. It seems the Malfoy family tutors are indeed pragmati. In some ways, Malfoy might have a point. Because they attended the same elementary school, Ethan and Harry had a strong relationship at the beginning of their time at Hogwarts. However, as they chose different elective courses, their friendship began to wane. If not for Hermione's presence and their shared adventures, they might have drifted into being just acquaintances by now. This semester in particular, Ethan and Harry hadn't been in touch much. The last time they spent time together was when Ethan went to comfort Hagrid during the first week of school. Their relationship became even more strained after Ethan declined Harry's invitation to join a study group, making their subsequent encounters awkward. "Did you secretly help Harry get to Hogsmeade?" Hermione asked as they walked towards Hogsmeade. She had finally pieced together what was amiss between Ethan and Harry during their previous confrontation. Ethan had great admiration for Hermione. She treated him with unconditional trust, which was always accompanied by reason. When faced with Ethan's decisions, she would immediately support him, even if his choices seemed illogical at the time. Understanding the reasons would come later. For instance, despite Hermione and Harry being close friends, she chose to support Ethan's decision during their altercation with Malfoy, even though it meant siding against Harry. This, Ethan believed, was the hallmark of intelligence. Truly smart individuals, when faced with seemingly unreasonable commands from their leaders, would execute these orders first and reserve their judgments for later. If the leader's decision is later proven correct, it validates the leader's superior wisdom. Conversely, if the leader is proven wrong, it's time to reconsider their leadership. Unlike Hermione, Ron had immediately shown his displeasure when Ethan didn't side with him. Ethan was confident, however, that Ron would come to understand and apologize later. But no apology could compare to Hermione's unwavering trust. Ethan didn't conceal the truth from Hermione, acknowledging her insight. "Yeah, you're not like those clueless relatives. With them around, Harry wouldn't have been able to get an autograph, so I asked George and the others to help him out." Hermione was pleased to learn that Ethan was indeed the compassionate person she believed him to be, yet she still had concerns. "Everyone says Sirius Black is targeting Harry. Even Professor McGonagall thinks it's too dangerous for him to go to Hogsmeade," Hermione pointed out. "Is that so?" Ethan questioned, shaking his head. "Sometimes appearances can be deceiving. If Black's target was truly Harry, why didn't he escape from prison 2 years ago when we first started school?" Hermione was left without an answer, while Penello, who had been listening, began to analyze. It might have taken him a few years, too. Ethan admired the wisdom of the female student president. She had almost guessed half of the truth. However, what Black had discovered was not news about Harry, but rather information regarding Peter Pettigrew, the traitor. If you think about it, you don't really understand the media. The news of the boy who lived enrolling at Hogwarts was indeed a story, but if the same story about the boy who lived enrolling at Hogwarts were reported for 3 consecutive years, it would no longer attract readers. In fact, news of Harry's enrollment at Hogwarts 3 years ago was covered in the Daily Prophet and Wizarding Weekly, Ethan explained. Upon hearing Ethan's analysis, the 2 women nodded in agreement, showing their approval of his insight. Ethan continued, "Moreover, we must not forget the presence of the Dementors. With Dementors patrolling, the longer prisoners remain in Azkaban, the more their physical and mental health deteriorates, making escape increasingly difficult. Therefore, if a prisoner has both the idea and the capability to escape, they would likely attempt it as soon as possible, rather than waiting until they no longer have the strength to do so." As the month arrived, Ethan made a personal appeal. "I'm asking for your support, be it through custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, or rewards. If you have votes to spare, please consider giving them to me, the author. This support is truly important to me.